Legacy Club. Today we're going to be doing a replay of the Legacy 1K we had this weekend at Point Break Arcade. To help me with commentary, we've got Ben and Taylor. Welcome, guys.
Hey yo, I'm Ben and this is Taylor. What match do we have to start us off, Jason?
So for match number one, on the left we've got Darwin playing Black Saga Storm, and on the right we have Walker playing Storm and Show, which I'm not super familiar with. So we'll see what this looks like.
Well, we're gonna have to see. I mean, presumably they've got short show and tells for big monsters like Emrakul and also some kind of Storm Wimcon like High Tide or something. So we'll see how that all goes. This is finally a match that I get to commentate with some amount of expertise because we have two combo decks mirroring off against each other, both of which have Storm in the name. So, traditionally, Storm mirrors tend to be about who can go off faster, but any kind of Storm and Show deck, you'd at least expect to be blue enough to run Force of Wills. So, Darwin has to keep that in mind. What do you think, Taylor?
Yeah, I think in this particular matchup, it's going to be interesting to see. You mentioned Force of Will. I think that's probably one of the strongest cards from this show and Storm deck. And from the other side, a card that I'm interested in seeing is Urza's Saga. That card can really help the Saga Storm deck with giving it a backup plan, and that backup plan being Saga is obviously really strong. We'll see if it comes up here. I agree with what you said too, Ben, that a lot of times in these Storm mirrors, speed is key. The
Yeah,
hand disruption from the Black Saga Storm side might be able to poke some holes, though, in that counterspell plan that we're going to probably see from the other side.
exactly. I mean, I haven't played much Black Saga Storm, but I've played other Storm decks against Black Saga Storm, and I've always been prepared to both go faster than them and protect against discard. The Saga backup plan from Black Saga Storm tends not to come into play with how fast these games tend to go, with Saga tokens attacking and killing someone as late as turn 5 or 6, optimistically. Um, So we're gonna see what they do. They're mulliganing. They're doing stuff. Let's get some cards on the felt here.
Absolutely. It's interesting too. The Black Saga Storm list here is more traditional, I guess you might say, than some of the recent developments in the archetype, in which we've seen people adopt the Echo of Aeon's Orcish Bowmasters plan. Arwen here is on the more traditional ad nauseum build.
Do you have links to the lists anywhere? I should probably take a look if you're seeing them.
I do. I'll see if I can get this posted in
No,
chat.
All right. Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Jason. So we're seeing a duress here.
So we get to look at the
Black
hand. We see Mind's Desire and Show and Tell is out. And maybe that's not Mind's Desire. Maybe it is. And Blur and Revealed and Brainstorm. But the Show and Tell gets taken, so makes sense. That's gonna come out pretty quickly.
Interesting not playing the Lotus Petal, knowing you're facing a discard deck, and you could cast Brainstorm off of it and preserve a fetch, but
You do
maybe
want to
thinking about.
hold petals for Storm if you don't think your petal's going to be discarded, and I wouldn't assume that it's going to be. Like, if you were to fire another Thoughtseizes off at this hand, I would probably take both Brainstorm and Mind's Desire over a Lotus Petal most of the time.
That's fair. Maybe you're just not worried about that at all, and extra storm matters more. We see the Saga on the other side.
Yep, Surveil land coming out as well. Artifact land coming out for the Saga deck. I mean, this is a mainstay of Black Saga Storm, but it is nice to have black artifact lands in the deck that you can sacrifice to beseech or power up Saga tokens and the like. Very nice edge the deck has over some other Storm variants.
And in modern for a reason, right?
Yeah. Likes the card on top. We ready to go to our turn here? They're
Still
still
thinking
considering.
about it. And Ben Emrakul. That'll trigger.
Yep. That may be my pre-release Emrakul there from way back in the day. Gotta shuffle the deck though.
Yeah, I think right now from the side from Walker's side, I think right now we're looking for action off of this brainstorm that would include big threat show and tell, something along those lines.
Big Threat Show and
Uh,
Tell, or we don't know how much mana it has, so it's like, is this a Dark Ritual deck? Is this a High Tide
hmm,
deck? Maybe there's a way that you can cast this Mind's Desire with a good enough brainstorm, right?
the double blue pips would be interesting if you're involving Dark Ritual. I would assume that card is in this deck. I don't know their list, so we're gonna find out, I guess, as we go. Scary thinking about the power of Dark Ritual and an ad nauseum strategy on the other side. Being able to instant speed your ad nauseums off of multiple rituals or even one ritual and some artifact mana really can catch your force of will gamers off guard. So we'll see if that comes up. It'll be interesting to find out what the saga is fetching out.
I am taking a
Perhaps.
look at the Storm and Show list now, by the way. So there is no Dark Ritual in the deck. There is three Atraxas and an Emrakul as threats. We have three Mind's Desire. Um, Profane Tutors to help find stuff that we need. Oh no, we do have Dark Ritual. Sorry, I was just looking in the wrong place in the deck. So we have Dark Ritual, we have Lotus Petal, we don't have LEDs. So yeah, we're trying to Dark Ritual out and use the Lotus Petal for like a second blue mana to get a Mind's Desire out there, or play a Show and Tell and get an Atraxor or an Emrakul into play. That seems to be a ponder.
For anybody watching on YouTube, all these deck lists are available in our Discord, so check out the link tree in the video description.
The real key card, I think, in this list is Omniscience. Looking at the list a little more, being able to desire off of Omniscience does seem quite strong to me. Also, putting
Yeah,
in all your monsters off of it, really good. So you can naturally show just an Atraxa, big hit, of course, or an Emrakul. There's no sneak attack in this list to give Emrakul haste, and against the deck like Black Saga Storm, which really only needs one turn to go off, Emrakul might not be good enough.
unless you're casting it and getting another turn, like this is where the
Right, and
Omniscience
that's where
comes in.
yeah, that's where something like Omniscience is pretty big.
That land is a bit glared, but it's presumably different from the vaults. Is it
I
some
think that's
kind
a
of
Mox
solar?
Opal.
Oh, it's in Mox Opal. Yeah, yeah. It's just being put in with the lands because it's mana. That makes sense.
A bit of a slow start here from the Saga Storm deck. Looks like we have one or maybe two cards left in hand. We are set up here for just beatdowns, though. Lava
Yep.
Spur Boots, I assume, is in this deck, and that is a lot of pressure.
I'm gonna see if I can find the other lists while we're resolving this brainstorm here.
So on this brainstorm, again, I think just trying to find a way to show in an Omniscience or an Atraxa would be likely the biggest hits here. Here comes a construct. It's already a 4/4. See an untap here from Black Saga Storm. Trigger on the stack. We're going to make another token. Reasonable. And I think we're probably finding the boots here. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, if there's a boots, then we do want to find it. That's gonna present the biggest clock, and that's absolutely what you want here. Like maybe you kept this hand knowing that you have disruption and saga and artifacts, and like this is a bit of a slow hand, and not knowing your opponent what your opponent's on. But now that you do know, you know the coast is clear, and you're just trying to race. Saga gets around counter spells. You're getting the boots, and you're going to be attacking for a 2 turn clock.
Oh, yeah.
So pretty happy about that in the Black Saga Storm position.
Interesting contrast
Yeah.
between the the mono black deck presenting one type of threat, and the blue storm deck, cantripping and pondering each turn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a backup plan that's really unique to this variant of Storm. It's strong. We're gonna see Rumble in here for what looks like 13 damage. Or is it gonna be 15?
Wow.
Trying to do an artifact count here.
Yep. 15. Count them.
Count them.
So, even showing an Emrakul isn't good enough anymore. Emrakul only gets to block 1. Atrax is still
Pretty.
pretty good, though.
Atraxa would be good. A lifelink would be really relevant here. We'll see what kind of answer this Show and Storm deck has. I think it's win now or bust, and I think it's going to have to involve an Omniscience.
So, it seems like we're going to try and Desire, because we're playing another Petal. If we have another source of mana like Dark Ritual, we're going to get to do it for at least a few goes, but a deck like this, when I tried running Mind Desire in traditional Storm lists, it's difficult to get it to go off for enough Storm that it's going to help you actually win the game. So in tests you have Galvanic Relay, and I find myself often Galvanic Relaying for 4 or 5 cards, and that's a lot more acceptable because you're playing them next turn with a bigger handful of cards and you're only paying 3 mana for the privilege. Mind's Desire lets you cheat on mana compared to Galvanic Relay, but you're not going to you're going to have to get more mana to pay for it in the first place, and usually if you're storming enough to make Mind's Desire really 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 good, you can play some other card to try and win instead.
Absolutely. We saw a Desperation Lorien revealed there using the Petal mana, hoping to find really anything but a quick concession after drawing some cards. We're going to sideboarding.
Yep. And it's sort of unclear in this position that you'd have enough mana to do anything relevant after Learn Reveal, but you gotta check the cards. You gotta, play to your outs,
Sure.
see what's going on.
Sure.
Let's take a look at the sideboards here. So, looking at this Black Saga Storm deck, I don't really see a lot in the way of help against this Show and Storm deck. Most of what they want to be doing is already in the main.
Absolutely. The Suite of Hand Disruption, all of the artifact mana. I don't think you're moving off of much here.
Yeah, this is sort of the lane Black Saga Storm wants to be in, disrupting the hand and trying to race, hope get through some counter spells. This doesn't seem like the kind of deck that you try to side in the Helm combo in, even though it's fast, because you don't even really want to take a lot out here. Most of the main deck plan just seems to be good enough. Um,
I totally agree.
on the other hand, taking a look at the Show and Storm deck, we have Beseiju, which is useful against Saga. Dismember, Brazen Borrower for Saga tokens. Force a Negation to stop some kind of Storm Enabler, like just some big mana thing like Dark Ritual. But, I don't know. Do you really want to be diluting your game plan that much with sideboarding? You probably don't need the Profane Tutors. You can maybe trim on the Mind's Desires. I haven't piloted this deck enough to know what you're supposed to take out in a situation like this, but as the Storm player against the Show and Tell opponent, I don't typically change much about the deck, and I'm unsure they change much against me besides putting in some Force Negations. So, what do you think?
I agree, Ben. I think Besage is going too deep. I do think Force Negation is likely coming in here. I think the cut is some number of Profane Tutors. Maybe you go down a little bit on mana and shave 2 Lotus Petals. Really depends on what their perspective is on the matchup. You're gonna struggle to race Black Saga Storm from the Show and Storm position, I feel. So maybe you do just want a little more protection in the Force Negations.
That's true. I would probably not want to give up on the race though in cut Lotus Petals because that is one of the best ways to get there. Like they don't have counter magic, so you're on the play game too. You could play Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, Show and Tell, and what are they going to do about it?
True.
But we
See
got
how
Thoughtseize
it
coming now.
progresses. Yeah, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out in a second, probably, unless we see a force of will here, what the grip is, and we
Interesting to
do.
Thoughtseize somebody who kept their Surveil card, because you can't Thoughtseize the top of the deck. So we are going to rip the counter magic out of the hand, though. So that's going to be helpful for next turn.
Yeah, it looks like there was the force there. We'll see what the draw is.
So yeah, Mind's Desire, Lotus Petal,
Probably.
Brainstorm, Ponder, Atraxa. So is nothing can happen this turn. There's no way to get the mana and the Show and Tell at the same time. So this Ponder is going to be setting us up for next turn and hoping for the best. It's a good keep from the Show and Storm side though, because it does have that Force of Will just in case they didn't keep a hand with discard stuff in it, and helps them fight some of the fast mana that the Black Saga Storm deck can do.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see. We really need, obviously, the land. I would assume that the Surveilled card was the land, or the Ponder card, which was kept, was a land. Maybe some other form of fast mana.
So Walker resolved to ponder, didn't shuffle, and drew for ponder.
Yep. This seems like a land's coming. It is a land. It's a black land. We got the Lotus Petal. All right, so a lot of stuff can happen starting from next turn. We have access to two hidden. We have one hidden card and then another card that Black Saga Storm doesn't know about coming on the draw step. So we have access to Mana and Mind's Desire, or Show and Tell, or Counterspell plus Show and Tell. And so we're playing another
Or you
artifact
can
land,
just
and we're playing
artifact lands.
Dark Ritual. We're going for it. Mox Opal's turned on, and Beseech Samir is live to do stuff. Ad Nauseum is live to do stuff. Short and Storm player isn't pressuring
Interesting
the
how
life total of the Ad
Beseech.
Nauseum player at all, so looks great here if it happens. Interesting how Beseech what?
Right. Yeah, interesting how Beseech functions in the Black Saga Storm deck compared to a deck like the Epic Storm, where the Epic Storm is maxing out on that card. 3 in the main, 1 in the side is a wish target with Burning Wish. But the Black Saga Storm deck, often you'll see only 2 copies, maybe 3. But it doesn't typically run Song of Creation, or I don't think it's in his list today.
Yeah, I was
But
about to say I just checked the tape, but I've been talking about Beseech, but that's not even in here. It looks like Wishclaw is the tutor of choice, and Infernal Tutor as well. So yeah, it is more traditional. I am familiar with this style of deck as well, but it is interesting that the thing that you want to leverage out of Black Saga Storm and being able to sacrifice your artifact lands isn't being leveraged right now.
mm,
Here's an ad nauseum from Darwin.
yeah,
Yep, and I was mentioning that Ad Nauseum looks really good here. We're on 20 life, and a lot of the time this does win the game.
fail rate is really low. I would expect that we're gonna draw 20 to 23 cards here.
Yeah, so typically what you want to be doing is you want to draw some more mana, you want to draw these baubles and opals and just keep cycling stuff. There's kind of no way to not get that, and then eventually rip a Wishclaw Talisman or an Infernal Tutor with a Lion's Eye Diamond to go find tendrils. If you draw tendrils with Ad Nauseum, then you're a little sad because you get to draw fewer cards, but that's another way to sort of naturally win as well. Like, the chance of bricking here is probably less than 5%. It involves something like drawing a lot of your tendrils and tutors, and somehow none of your zero mana artifacts or all of your zero mana artifacts are Lion's Eye Diamonds. But seems like we're doing stuff here. Most of the cards I can make out in this hand are going to help Darwin win here.
He did hit tendrils and he did hit
Inter-
profane tutor, but lots of mana too.
think that's an Infernal Tutor. Definitely, yeah, definitely has the mana. I was kind of surprised to not see a sacrifice of the Lion's Eye Diamond, the diamond that was already in play. Maybe. Um,
Yeah, that's generally what you want to be doing, but it's also nice to have one if you don't draw one post ad nauseum. Like I said, this is the way that you get to tutor for anything you want with Infernal Tutor. I've been in situations before where it's come up. And it looks like in this list where we have 4 Lotus Petals and 2 Chromoxes and 3 Mox Opals, getting started on your mana is probably not like the way that ad nauseum fails here. It's probably not actually being able to find tendrils after drawing all your
yeah,
cards.
that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of, I mean, right, the randomness of the card inherently makes it hard to predict. I think mathematically you're gonna, like you said, there's so many zeros in the deck that produce mana, you're gonna be fine the vast majority of the time. I would think too in the variants that run Echo Veons don't that don't even run ad nauseum, LED is even more important to have kind of in the wings. Well,
Yeah.
there's a concession. That was a fast ad nauseum kill. Interesting to see in game one the Saga constructs get it done. So
Yep. And there's no better feeling for me than hard casting an ad nauseum and not like having it be degenerate, like with an Angel's Grace or something. You actually have to draw the cards and lose the life, and then like use those cards that you drew and the life that you lost to win the game. It's one of the first decks I ever played in Legacy as ad nauseum tendrils, and really great to see the Darwin take it down here with that traditional kill. Also great to see the show and storm style deck. Like we saw a lot of hands, we saw a lot of game plans almost come together there. Um, it's a really interesting brew, and we'll see how far this goes in the tournament. Let's go on to the next round.
All right, for round two, we have Darwin again on Black Saga Storm, and on the right, we have Cody playing the boogeyman of the format, Re-scaminator.
Alrighty, let's take a look. Um, so just sort of as a storm player against Re-scaminator in general, what you're afraid of most of the time from a Reanimator deck in general and Re-scaminator in particular are turn one free discard effects backing up like turn one or turn two threats that also threaten to kill you and pick you apart. It doesn't tend to look good for the storm player if they curve into like their top 60% of draws in my experience, but we're going to see how the matchup goes. The slower game plan again I think doesn't look so hot here against a resolved Atraxa or Archon of Cruelty or something, but it does look better against just a discard hand that Cody could have here out of Risk-Scaminator. Like, you like Risk-Scam and a Grief and take a couple cards, and then you say, cool, I'll play Urza Saga and make a couple 5/5s. What do you think, Taylor?
yeah, I agree with everything you were saying. Seems really important for Saga Storm deck to get this game won. Things things get even harder post board, and it's not like the matchup is a good matchup for Storm decks traditionally. I don't know if I'd call it a nightmare matchup, but traditionally blue black, some mixture of hand disruption with cheap threats and counter magic is really not what Storm's hoping to see. I think the
I
Galvanic Relay Burning Wish versions of Storm, the test decks, have a little more resiliency with something like Veil of Summer, but without Veil in this deck, relying only on the discard, which gets worse over time, it seems that a quick ad nauseum is really going to be key here.
This card isn't even what you want in general against a deck like this. I mean, obviously you'd like to strip forces, but there's always a chance in a deck like this that if you discard, you could be taking some creature that they want to reanimate, and then they top deck a reanimation effect, you know? It's
Yeah, it's
happened
definitely
before,
sketchy.
especially if you get down to a game where it's like they grief scam you and then you like discard them and then like you're both top decking and then it's like turn 5 and they have 2 cards in hand and you draw a Thoughtseize and you're like, do they have the animate or do they have the creature or do they have a counter spell? It's like, am I supposed to Thoughtseize here? What else do I have in my hand? It can be a tough decision sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't
Re-scaminator
call this.
player starting on Ponder here.
Yep. But yeah, I
So
wouldn't call this a nightmare matchup like you were saying. Like, I definitely think it's fairly even. I just think it's one in which the Storm player has comparatively less agency than normal. Like, that the Re-scaminator player's better draws kind of control the pace of the game, and how they lose in game one tends to be they mulligan or brick on what they're looking for, rather than, like, you sort of working around what they have.
here's Cabal Therapy. Probably naming Force of Will, seeing the Underground Sea on the other side of the battlefield.
Yeah, it's generally what you're looking for. Cabal Therapy
Don't
is a
know.
nice addition in this style of deck because you have sagas to make creatures for you to sack as well. But
Force was the name here. We have looks like Grief Black card. I think that's a
Days Brain.
troll.
Yeah, it's troll, grief, daze, brainstorm, and another C. So we didn't daze the Cabal Therapy. So we're planning
Didn't
to
daze the LED either.
we're planning to just grief him and then use the daze as backup for whatever reason. I think it probably is right to daze one of those two things, but um I imagine that Cody doesn't feel especially threatened here, given that he's got the grief to help. But Darwin's sitting there with two tutors, so yeah.
I think it's well. I don't know if Cody knew what Darwin was on. I'm not sure. If they're running the newer Echo list, letting LED resolve is really sketchy. But if you're putting them on a list relying on more heavily on tutors and not wheel effects, and saving the days for example, this card, Wishclaw Talisman, I think is pretty reasonable. I don't know what the read was there. LED is obviously a scary card, but follow up of a Saga and a Wishclaw is gonna eat this days anyway.
Yep. So we didn't discard to pay for it, so we like the card in our hand. Um I don't know. It's just like on turn one, would you trade a daze for a force of will with the Cabal Therapy?
Mm,
Or you
I
don't have to name the card as you're casting Cabal Therapy. Maybe you're just hoping they don't guess Force of Will. But
Yeah, seeing Island or excuse me, Swamp Cabal Therapy doesn't give away too much information. Kind of hard to know exactly what your opponent is on with that precise sequence, but I think dazing it may have been correct just to hide the information. Um, we'll see ultimately what happens here. Wasteland takes out the Saga in a follow up of Vault of Whispers.
yeah, so that may have been the card that we liked not to discard to Lion's Eye Diamonds, the Saga. But
Hmm.
seems like you'd want to play a Saga first to play around the days that you'd know about as well. We're playing fast here and going far enough. Seems like we're sort of in a top deck war here where the Re-scaminator threat has succeeded in stripping all the cards from Darwin's hand and now has an Orcish Bowmaster's getting in there every turn. Saga's not on the
Hmm.
board anymore. We're just hoping to find some gas.
Yeah, the Spellmasters will be relevant against the ad nauseum strategy over time. The Black Saga Storm deck is not going to be triggering it in the same way that something like the Epic Storm or traditional Ant would with the blue cantrips, but every hit represents fewer cards off of a potential ad nause. So it represents, I think, pretty reasonable clock. We might see another tutor effect here. Looks like we're tapping 2 mana for something, which tends to be a tutor in the Black Saga Storm deck.
Yeah. Black Saga Storm is running Baubles, which Bowmasters stifles. Like, Bauble looks like a real bad draw when you draw it, you draw a card next turn and also take a damage and an Orc Army pump for it. But yeah,
It
that's a
was,
Cabal Joel that's coming out.
yeah, Cabal Writ. No threshold there, so we have three floating, one floating
Vernal,
Infernal.
Tutor, Crack Prep, LED. Burning Wish down. So we're putting our hopes on an ad nauseum here. It looks like that would be my guess.
I think it's reasonable from this position. Like, it's not getting better, right? We just,
No.
like we were just discussing, your life total's dwindling. Your opponent's going to draw more cards, more looks at the force. This is what you go for. And whether or not Cody has interaction is probably going to be whether or not he wins the game. There's the ad nauseum, paying for it. Open to days right now, which would be a huge blowout, but maybe he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, we have enough life to work with here. A few more attacks with the Bowmasters, and that may not have been the case. Always starting from 0 with Ad Nauseam is a bit rough. Like, it is nice to have at least 1 mana floating so that your Dark Rituals are online, but, or even better, 2 mana floating so that your Cabal Rituals are online. But you take what you can get here, and I like Darwin's chances here. I've done plenty of Ad Nauseam math, and, you know, it's not going to miss very often here.
There's a ritual. That's good news. Some lands.
Another ritual.
Mox Opal and Chrome Mox. Those
we're
are
good on
huge.
mana. We have an LED. We have Thoughtseize as well. So if Cody was sandbagging a Stifle or something, the Thoughtseize can stop that. But I don't think this list has Stifle. I'm taking a look at it. Yeah, there's no Stifle in it.
Stifle would be a spicy one.
I mean, it's one of the only things that you wouldn't have played by this point.
There's IT. I think there's an LED somewhere in there to go with it.
No, there is an LED. So we are done here. I feel like Darwin maybe could stop a little earlier, depending on how low he's going. You got to be mindful of your life total a little bit in a world where Orcish Bowmasters exists.
This does look like a win to me. We'll see how Darwin strings it together. Probably starting on Mox Opal. There's 2 of them. There's a Chrome Mox somewhere in there, I believe. Got Petals, so all the artifact mana is pretty free to play.
You just play out like all your mana. If they don't concede immediately, what I would start doing is just play all my mana, generate a million storm, hit them with the Thoughtseize. You know, just then they usually concede to that if just take a look at their hand.
We're discussing something here. Looks
probably
like,
whether he played a land drop.
Huh. Discarded Tendrils, which doesn't seem possible
What
to
happened?
me because he sacked his LED and discarded his hand. So Tendrils is either revealed among the cards with Ad Nauseam or drew it accidentally.
It seems as though maybe he like miscounted his life and like ripped another card he might not have needed to rip.
I'm not sure. It looks like our judge who attended the event is sorting it out right now. So we're figuring out what the remedy here is for this Tendrils of Agony. It looks like we're going to shuffle the deck. So maybe Darwin just wanted to stop drawing cards before he drew Tendrils.
Or maybe he like looked at 2 at a time or something. I didn't follow all that closely. We'll see.
Well, either way, it seems to be a bit of a moot point. Lethal is easily on the board here once we resolve this issue. So there's a Petal. Ad Nauseam has resolved, is in the graveyard, starting with the artifact mana. Cody's going to make him walk through it here, I guess, but he is, in fact, going to die, it seems.
Yeah, there's enough discard effects. Even Mind Break Trap or Stifle won't save you. We're not running green, so no Veil of Summers. And this, kind of paradoxically, Veil of Summer is one reason why I like having Thoughtseize in the deck, because Thoughtseize is one of the only cards that can get Veil of Summer out of the hand before you actually kill them. So you can Veil and Summer them on one turn and then storm them the next turn, which is better than a lot of decks can do when you're trying to storm off.
Yeah. Yeah, Veil's such a powerful card. I think it in these storm style decks I think if you're not relying on Veil, it's really strong to rely on Echo Veons as another way of just disrupting the hand, making things awkward for your opponent. But ad nauseum, the traditional route here is still plenty strong, as we're seeing
Oh, I
Darwin draw
love it.
annoying cards um, and Cody die eventually to Storm Count. So
I don't really like Echo Vions much in the same way as I do Thoughtseize, specifically because Echo can refill your opponent's hand of counterspells when they didn't have them before, which is kind
right,
of an awkward position to be in. If I'm playing test and I'm getting a veil, so getting an Echo Vions, I prefer to do it having already resolved a Veil of Summer first so that this situation can't come up. But even so, you could still be giving your opponents veils that they didn't have before, you know? A lot of people are running Storm Hate cards, especially in this scene, because it's a bit of a popular deck, so it can be a little scary to give your opponents more looks at them.
no doubt. I think it's a great place right now for Storm players in Legacy. There's actually a surprising amount of diversity in terms of what your Storm strategy can look like. Everything
Oh,
from
absolutely.
the Epic Storm to this Black Saga Storm deck that Tony Scapone, the streamer, really worked on and made popular to Unbending of Mind's Desire, making High Tide viable. There's so many different avenues,
Even
and
traditional
I
like
think
red and black or 4 color or 3 color ant lists or red and green ant or black and green ant lists, like I like traditional ad nauseum tendrils, and the printing of a siege didn't change that. It's good stuff.
yeah, there's so many options, and Storm obviously an archetype that really heavily rewards consistent practice, and it's a deck that you can get rusty with, and I think the ability to show up at these weeklies, get practice in. If you're playing online, do that. That's really when you start to reach the next level with a deck like Storm. It seems like a deck with quote unquote free wins, but really none of the wins are free with Storm.
Yeah, especially when you have, when you're talking about decks with Echo Vions and decks with Ad Nauseum, you're not like you are making blind bets here. You are saying that I'm resolving this card, which gives me a chance to win. Um, and my opponent has this hand, and I have this composition of cards left in my deck, and this mana available to me, and this storm count. What's the chances off of these 7 cards, or off of this much life's worth of cards, that I'm going to have what I need to win? And this is a function that blows up very, very quickly, mathematically speaking. And I mean, this is, you know, the good thing about mastery. Like any of these decks has a level that you can think about it be ad infinitum. Like for a simpler deck, you could probably play out an entire matchup's worth of game decisions and get a similar game complexity. But this is what Magic is. This is what you're allowed to do. But I like Storm for this reason, being able to analyze the micro decisions in this way as well.
Yeah. Our players are sideboarding here. I'm thinking from the Black Saga Storm perspective, Leyline Helm combo seems to be pretty much a home run. What would you say, Ben?
I agree. I mean, if you want to be hitting their graveyard, then bringing in Leyline Helm is a way to go fast and also do that. The fact that Leyline gets to come into play uncounterably turn 0 as a combo piece is kind of nuts. And even if Re-scaminator pivots off of the scam plan and into a sort of traditional tempo deck Murktide plan, as we see in the sideboard with Dothies and whatnot, Murktide still cares about there being a graveyard. You're not going to be happy if a Leyline of the Void just hits the field, and you're not going to have easy ways to remove it outside of, say, Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the Rescaminator side, we're gonna see some mix of what you just described, then, which is a transformational plan, along with 8 pieces, something along the lines of Null Rod, maybe. There could be Force of Negations in the sideboard. I've not looked at Cody's list, but
There
we'll
is a
find
no
out
rod and two
shortly.
Force of Negations, so I think that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. You can. I don't think you need to run Dothies into like if you suspect Beseech, then you can run Dothies to hit the graveyard because the fastest Beseech routes go through the graveyard with the guy as well. But you haven't seen a Beseech, and you know Ad Nauseam is on the menu, so maybe you bring that in based on your gut feeling. And you probably don't need to juke the main reanimation plan against a lot of traditional storm lists. Like, you have Tess or even Ant don't really have lots of room for graveyard hate. But Black Saga Storm specifically, if you're clocking that, you might know that they have ley lines in the sideboard, and you might know that they have Helm combo. So you probably are going to be forced to juke some of that traditional reanimation plan just to dodge a little bit of that hate.
yeah, it makes it a little more awkward than it might be against other storm variants for sure. I agree with what you said about Dothy. That card is even against a Saga Storm deck with 2 to 3 Beseeches in it. I'm not seeing it as being a high enough impact card that I would want to bring it in. Sure, it's a body. Um, I just don't think it disrupts enough. We'll see exactly what mix of cards Cody brought in here. You can
Your
assume for
bowmasters don't
sure
look
the Null
great. You can
Rod.
Your bowmasters don't look super great here. I mean, Dothy kind of looks a
Yeah,
little bit better than them. If you suspected Beseech, I wouldn't really be surprised if that was a pivot that happened.
yeah. Doing some
Mulliganing.
shuffling here, some mulliganing. Looks like we've got a keep from Cody, and Darwin is still figuring out whether or not he's going to keep his hand. All right, we're good to go, it looks like. Oh,
We
there's
do
a
get
ley
the ley
line.
line, yep.
Yeah. Pre-game effects there, putting that in play. And Underground Sea pass from Cody. It maybe a bit disappointing to not have Grief in the opening hand, but there are definitely mixes of hands that will be perfectly serviceable without a Grief or a Thoughtseize, for example, something along those lines.
If I'm the
There's
Storm
Mox
player,
Opal and Vault.
yeah, if I'm the Storm player, I'm expecting counter magic if I see this opening from the Re-scaminator player. Multiple
No
days
doubt.
or Force of Wills.
No doubt. So Mox Opal's turned on very quickly here. We're gonna see looks like
Wishclaw?
Wishclaw. Yeah.
So it's not Ad Nauseam yet. It's
That
not.
resolves.
Yeah. It's threatening to be next turn, probably. Yeah. We're gonna crack a bobble, draw a card, hope for the best. It is also Helm next turn, if we get enough mana. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we get one more, we can crack Wishclaw, find Helm, and then use Helm. But not through counter magic, which is the scary part here.
Yeah, going for a Helm line does seem a little risky without taking a peek at the hand first. I'm not sure I love that, but we'll see. We'll see what Darwin does. The problem with that line is that you're activating the Wishclaw to get the Helm, right? So you, if your Helm gets countered, now your opponent can go find Null Rod, and your whole board is
Right.
not functional.
But we've kept a faster hand without a discard effect, right? So we're taking a
Yeah,
line, and we have one card left in the hand here. So we're taking a line where we're either going to wait for some discard, or we're going to go all in. And if we go all in, we can go all in with Helm as opposed to something like Ad Nauseam, because Helm costs less mana and just wins the game.
not sacrificing the bauble, it appears. Or wait, we're on the
No,
instant
we
now.
are.
We're gonna look. Yeah.
So Grief looks at Ancient Tomb, doesn't find anything of note, but you know, this makes Cody feel good, presumably because it's not discard, it's not a threat. It means that one of these bobble cards and the draw cards needs to be the discard, and one of them needs to be the threat, assuming that Cody does have counter magic, which again is represented pretty heavily by the play that we've seen so far.
Yeah, and I do think I see Force of Will hanging out among the three cards left in Cody's hand. So, yeah, it's definitely got to be on Darwin's radar here, thinking, what are my chances of, Force Blue card being in the grip versus does it even get better? You are kind of priced into this line a little bit, like you said. You're set up here for it, and without a force, or if he has a force and no blue card, it's obviously just game over. So um, we're gonna see him tap the vault here. Looks like, well, looks like
Are we
before we
gonna
do that,
crack the LED with the two cards in hand?
we're gonna see what he does here.
With Infernal Tutor and another Wish Claw, I think so? Is what was discarded? Okay.
I think I prefer playing out the Wish Claw potentially.
Yeah. That gives you a chance to set up to like use a Wish Claw for discard and use a Wish Claw for a threat. We're giving him the Wish Claw and we're looking for some action.
Yeah, and this is gonna turn out probably to be a disaster for Darwin because with the force in Cody's hand, he's gonna have access to Null Rod, and then all of this setup is
Is
kind
that
of
what you
for
think that we're
nothing.
playing around here by cracking LED for this? As opposed to spending Vault Mana?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what the thought process there. I guess that is probably what's going on. Yeah.
Or like a
Because
Brazen Borrower bounce or something, or I don't know. That wouldn't even be that good here. I'm
doesn't have
not.
the mana to bounce it right now. So there's home,
Yep.
and we're gonna see force. And now all Cody's missing is a threat. Without a threat in play, I don't know. I find that to be slightly aggressive. I get the thinking. I definitely understand the rationale. He has three cards in hand and doesn't have a threat in play, but now you're just top decking and he has a wish claw. So
Yeah, it only
it's
gets worse for you at this point. It also only gets worse for you the more you keep passing, the more you let your opponent ponder and grief you and all that. Perhaps play something like No Rod, but um, we went for it here and it didn't really work out. So Cody's thinking about probably what to wish claw for. Has access to a free card of his choosing.
there's
Does have the
Gothy.
Jothy. Yeah, we did put those in.
Okay. So I mean, it's a threat. It's gonna kill Darwin eventually, and it's really what Cody wanted to see was being able to deploy a cheap threat on 2 mana. And boots are pretty poor draw to follow up. We got nothing to equip those two, so
Saga would be a great draw here. This is the one card backup plan. So finding the boots, I mean the boots is going to be found by Saga anyway, but Saga will get another artifact presumably. We
is
do
there
see
a
a
world
Thoughtseize here.
then where yeah, let's see on the stack. Is there a world where you bring in Shadow Spear in a matchup like this? I would think not, right?
I also would think not. It just doesn't seem to be the axis that you want to win on, but I mean, we did talk about top deck wars, and that is what's happening right now. It's possible that Shadow Spear is the thing that gets you over the line against something like an Archon of Cruelty, right? But
Yeah, or even just like mid beats from something like a Dothy or a Brazen Borrower, but it seems a little bit of a like a little bit of a stretch. I've just noticed too that Cody's playing a scrub land, so some number of white cards are in the 75. I would think it's a
oh, I see
combination
Pest
of.
Control in the side.
Oh, interesting.
The
Okay.
new big scorecard that destroys non-land permanents and mana value one or less. That looks great here, you know? Just rip all the
Yeah,
artifacts. It's like another couple of copies of Olrod.
yeah. I think pest control is pretty sweet in a build like this. I agree.
I forgot to mention that during the sideboarding, but that is an interesting call here. No white cards in the main. I think that's what it's here for.
Must be, yeah. My first thought was like, uh-oh, is there something along the lines of deafening silence or just an absolute haymaker? But even pest controls, like you said, totally serviceable against cheap artifact deck. We'll see an activation of the Wish Claw here. I'd imagine this is getting Null Rod. You can't give him access to the Wish Claw again, so Null Rod just shuts down his tutor and 3 of his other permanents.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there you go. Yeah, it shuts down the Wish Claw on the way back. The only other thing I could have thought of would be you go grab a Traxa or something and reanimate it, but there's just no need. Just get the
Yeah.
no rod.
Probably going to be going to game 3 here in due time. Clock is not oppressive, but the life total is dwindling here. Looks like we're at what, 7 life now?
I think so. These Abacus Lace counters are a bit harder to read, but yeah. Pondering. Can't tap the Ancient Tomb anymore.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Go out on
you
your own
can.
terms.
You can tap it, but not tap it and live. So we're going to go to game 3 here. I would think that sideboard configurations are going to stay mostly the same. I can't imagine there's like a play draw consideration here, but
No, I don't think there is, but I think there might be adjustments from mulligans, right? So now that Darwin gets to be on the play, maybe we can keep a hand like we kept this time without a lot of disruption that can go fast, or we can adjust and try to keep a hand with disruption. I mean, it's hard to turn down a ley line with you when you get it, and also a fast combo plan. That's just going to be a good way to win a lot of the games that happen against this kind of deck, but
Mhm.
it's just not always going to work out. So maybe we could have played that hand a little bit slower, but it's definitely difficult to try and throw something like that back and look for a Thoughtseize when you have a serviceable game plan.
Oh yeah, no, I really like the keep. And like you said, Leyline being in the opener is always just icing on the cake, so to speak. I think that playing the Wish Claw, taking just one more turn off, maybe we would have seen a different result. But you know, it's always hard to know. Being in the storm seat, you're juggling a lot of considerations, and so we'll see if Darwin bounces back here in game 3. Being on the play really helpful. So
No, absolutely. And the reason I'm even talking about it is because it's an ambiguous decision, right? I don't know for sure
right,
one way or the other, and the cards in anyone's hands can change
right.
between games, between matches, and so trying to take trying to learn from any losses is a it's a daunting process when you consider just like how statistically ridiculous like the subset of games of Magic that can happen even in like a specified matchup are.
Oh yeah, big time. We when you and I have the luxury of sitting here watching it with a bird's eye view, Legacy is such an intricate format. There's so much going on that really, when you're in a game and you're trying to figure out where's my line, how do I get over the finish line here, it's tricky. And I'd be the first to admit that piloting a storm deck is something that I don't consider myself to be particularly good at, and something I need to learn to be better at. So
Looks like we're keeping the 6 here. Let's see what we start with. Pre-game actions?
pre-game actions, I
No.
no.
Vault of Whispers.
We're gonna take a peek here.
Yep, so here we go. We got the disruption. And it's coming out before the brainstorm gets to hide the goodies.
Looks like we got a
One.
potentially fast troll here.
Yeah, this is a land heavy hand, but it does have Troll Khazad. Brainstorm being discarded. So
Interesting.
we don't really care too much about the troll if we have a fast clock of our own. So taking the
Right.
brainstorm means we don't want Cody to draw Forcible later.
Yeah, taking brainstorm to me suggests that you're winning before Cody's third turn.
Delta coming out here. There's Surveil land in this deck. Doesn't seem like it.
Hmm.
Ancient
There's the
Tomb coming.
tomb.
That's a way to go fast. More duress. Okay. They're
Oh
gonna get one of the
no.
reanimates.
Oh no. Yeah. I guess if you have double discard, taking the brainstorm to prevent him hiding cards on the second discard makes sense. Him drawing another reanimate's kind of a nightmare scenario, though, if you don't have a fast plan to back it up, because now Troll's going to represent a really fast clock that's going to make ad nauseum unviable very quickly.
Right. And we still have Helm combo for a similar mana line that doesn't cost life, but you don't have Leyline in play, so that's not something you have access to anymore. Oh, the Null Rod gets ripped right off the top,
Uh,
so that's just gonna hurt even more. You thought these twice and you still couldn't get the Null Rod before it comes down.
yeah, Cody's top decks here have been just runner, and that's right there. That's going to make it really hard for Darwin to do. He doesn't have a land either, so this is gonna be tricky. Wasteland takes out his only mana source that he can tap, and here's your animate on Troll.
This is sort of what I mean by it's like it feels like the Storm deck can have less agency in this matchup sometimes. It's like if the discard gets you just right, or if you get your lands wastelanded and your artifacts turned off just right, it's like there's not a lot you can do against some of the best starts that Re-scaminator has. And it's just like it's not gonna feel good getting hit in the face with this troll 3 times before you die, but that's just how it's gonna be sometimes.
Yeah, Re-scaminator sometimes just has these really nutty hands that, yeah. I don't want to say they punish you for being creative, but if you don't have a really proactive game plan against them, you're just gonna get buried. I think we're gonna see Borrower here on the instep, adding more power
Yeah.
and toughness to the board. So why not?
Gonna waste that for good measure, just in case. It wasn't tapping for mana, but now it's just gone.
He's got one more draw here. I don't know what it could be. Yeah.
Yep, there we go. We're done. So Re-scaminator takes it in the end. Good showing from both players, but yeah, the Cody's deck curved out in the end.
All right, let me
Yeah.
jump in here between rounds. Again, this is Florida Legacy Club. This is a replay of our Legacy 1K that we had on Saturday at Point Break Arcade. Huge thanks to everybody that came out and joined us, and special thanks to Sam, our judge, who came over from Tallahassee. All right, I'll get us set up for round 3.
It looks like we got Cody in this one and Nick, who's on Esper Legends. This is a deck that he's been running pretty hot with recently. Really cool deck. We'll see some of the neat tricks on camera, I'm sure. Relies heavily on Samwise the Stout-Hearted and interactions with Caracas as Masters and the usual Esper suite of goodies, Thoughtseize, Swords to Plowshares as white removal. A really cool deck. It'll be interesting to see how blue-black versus blue-black and a white splash clash here, because white is really the best color against these Re-scaminator decks, and white removal from Nick is going to be at a premium. I would say from Cody's side, obviously a fast Atraxa when Nick doesn't have the white mana to remove it or the swords to remove it would be
Or the
huge,
Caracas.
or the Caracas. But you know, we could see a scrappy game here, some sort of nickel and dime um, Bowmasters fights. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So
Yeah. Interesting that this is called Esper Legends when we seem to just have Samwise in the main deck. But
well, he's enough of a legend in his own right, perhaps.
sure.
Maybe we've got Lavinia in the sideboard. Who
We do
knows?
have Lavinia in the sideboard. There we go. There's a legend friend.
Yeah, and another card that'll be interesting to see in a matchup like this, I think, is Wasteland, which from both sides could be just timely enough cut off an angle that the opponent is relying on, whether that be from Nick cutting out a white source to prevent him from removing your creatures if you're Cody, or from Cody's side not wanting Nick to take you off mana sources early and just kind of mana screw you. So cheeky
Yeah.
wastelands might come up here too. We'll see.
The weakness of the Re-scaminator deck is the fact that you have to keep these lean hands, right? That you have Grief Blackcard, Reanimate, like Daze, Force, or whatever, and it's like you're really only doing a couple of things with your mana, or you're keeping like a couple of lands to help you out. But if you're taking off those lands yourself, or if you're attacked in just the right ways, you can be in just as much of a bind as your opponent would be when you put the discard pressure on them. But right now we ponder into a grief scam, and we're taking a look at a nice Samwise Bowmaster's Force, Wasteland, Plains, Tundra. So,
Good hand here.
yeah. What do you
Missing a
take here,
blue
Cody?
card. I feel like you probably take Bowmasters. Yeah. I think at this stage in the game, really wanting to sculpt, and I would not want to see Bowmasters on the battlefield. Caracas also not being in the hand yet makes Sam a little bit less of a threat.
Would you still consider taking Sam if you're worried about getting like Wasteland locked? Sam can go buy you back your Wastelands and start going to town.
Yeah, definitely a consideration. Sam is, in this deck in particular, a pretty scary card. The amount of value that it will accrue just by tempting you and buying back, like you said, something relevant like a Wasteland. It seems innocuous enough, but over the course of a long game, it will bury you. It kind of depends on what Cody's hand looks like. If he's trying to reanimate next turn, maybe with backup, Bowmasters. Oh, here's the Thoughtseize.
Yes.
This is a great play, backed up by Wasteland. But yeah, I think Bowmasters or Sam are both really reasonable. I can't see exactly what the texture of Cody's hand is like, but we're about to find out perhaps. So
Yeah, we were perhaps hoping that Nick didn't draw a blue card so that you can go reanimate a grief next turn or something. But yeah, we're about to reveal that hand. He played around Days by putting the Wasteland into play. See how
yeah,
it
heads up
goes.
play there from Nick. I do think Cody is thinking about forcing this. Maybe he is really valuing something like a reanimate or an entomb. He's thinking for a while, so
Maybe if he reveals a hand with no lands, he's like worried that he's gonna get Wastelanded, and it was like considering dazing to like make him pay for it. I don't know. That seems hard. Or and like to protect the land. But we do value the information. We do go down 2 cards to force the Thoughtseize.
yeah,
And in
I would
response,
think
Nick is gonna waste him.
yeah. We do have a follow-up land here, so that's good news for Cody.
Yeah.
I would think if you're on Nick's side, you're thinking, I wastelanded you, you spent a days in a force. He's probably not mad about that exchange.
But he doesn't have a force of his own. He just showed Cody that he doesn't have a blue card, and we're about to reanimate and take the Samwise out of the hand. Or maybe the
Right.
force, but I would take the Samwise here so that he's got nothing left.
Yeah, I think you take Sam and just try and fade white removal here and see if you can draw another threat or if the grief maybe even goes the distance.
And so yeah, we were just protecting the plan. So from Cody, it's sort of just like you're doing the math here with the Thoughtseize on the stack. It's like you know Nick's entire hand, you know what's going to happen, and you know that if you force this Thoughtseize, then you're going to be able to reanimate and take this card. And so I think that does put you in a pretty good position here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here's
we
a
are going to
brainstorm. Yeah, Nick would have loved to have a Bowmasters there. Did not.
have one turn to draw one.
Yeah, that would have been.
Any consideration to like maybe attacking with grief first, so that if there is a Bowmasters, you don't get your grief just murdered?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the grief is having menace. I mean, I think I probably would have attacked first. I agree with what you're saying. Knowing that you're going to be brainstorming post combat, hoping that Bowmasters isn't in the hand and it wasn't the one draw Nick had, but didn't wind up being relevant. We're going to attack now. Nick's down to 16, so he's got a healthy enough life total to work with. Having basic planes in play is really big because now a top deck swords, what have you, will give Nick the ability to remove the grief. Plays the Tundra and passes it back.
One interesting thing about this deck is that it does also have Sauron's Ransom in it, which is a card I've seen a couple of times in Modern and Legacy as like an interesting sort of faction or factor fiction aside. But it leads me to believe that like between bouncing Sam and like getting the Sam plan going and playing a couple of Sauron's Ransoms, the tiers of the ring tempt you mechanic may become relevant in this or future matches. It's an interesting consideration.
Looks like a second reanimate was spent by Cody. I believe he was attempting to reanimate the Bowmasters out of Nick's graveyard. Nick followed up with a Caracas, and here's a Ponder. So, just looking for removal here, I would assume. We're going to see a quick shuffle, so... See if you can find it. Looks like we're going to see an Entomb here on the end step. We still have a Force hanging out, right? So maybe Nick just fights over this, and he does.
Yeah, this is the Re-scaminator player sort of doing a good job of pressuring Nick's resources, not letting him hold a grip of forces and cantrips or like build up a presence where he can fight. There's like constantly presenting things that Nick needs to do something about while hitting for 3 with a Menace Grief. It's the plan that you want to be having. And if Nick doesn't find removal, as you said, it's gonna get even harder.
Yeah, Nick being at 9 already. Time is ticking for sure. Looks like Cody is taking a look here at the ring mechanic, making sure he has a grasp on all of what the ring does. A wall of text.
So usually what happens like in the draft format, right? The place you wanted to get to in the ring mechanic was level 2, where you start looting whenever you attack. And that's going to be true in most construction formats as well. The Skulk, lots of stuff is attacking past each other in these creature combats, even in Legacy, and this matchup is no exception. If you get all the way up to level 4, you basically get a nice +3/+0, which is cool. But yeah, you're looking for looting, you're looking for damage.
Yeah. We saw Bowmasters being put back into play out of Nick's graveyard with an animate dead from Cody. So that'll be a 0-1 Bowmasters. It pinged him, made it Orc Army. Nick is pondering.
Getting pinged again. Did find the swords for the grief. But that Ponder just made him take 2 on his own and made the Orc Army even bigger for future turns. And made dead again.
Looks like Cody is the grief in his graveyard instead of it being in exile. So we'll see. We've moved in we moved into Cody's turn. It's still in the graveyard, so see if that gets resolved. Sam being put into play off another animate dead and bounce back to Nick's hands since
And
he's
by the
the owner.
Caracas. Oh, wow.
Yeah, he owns that permanent, so he will return it to his own hand.
This could be the start of a comeback from Nick if he gets a little bit of breathing room here. Getting to buy back your own Sam after having an anime dead is huge.
Yeah, I don't know why you would animate dead it exactly, knowing that it could just be returned.
He probably didn't recognize the Caracas art from the Realms and Relics set that Nick has here. Even
Yeah,
in the deck list here, it actually doesn't name it as Caracas. It names it as White Tower of Ecthelion.
yeah. Not my favorite choice by Wizards, but skins are popular. So Cody's gonna draw again. It looks like we're really close to stability. If he needs a removal spell on the Orc Army to
Well, he's got
survive,
Caracas
so
in the hand to block, so at the very least, we could try to do that. Cody's doesn't have cards in hand to counter that.
and this is
Or not Caracas,
problematic.
not Caracas, the Sam in hand, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he could block and then bounce, not damage the Sam. Looks like Cody's going for reanimate on this grief, which should be an exile. So
So,
this
yeah,
is
that's...
kind of a problem. I think I want to say I'm not a judge for clarification, but I think the rules state that this would have been a game rules violation when the state of the game was missed and grief was put into the graveyard instead of exile, and both players having missed it means that they technically both would get a game rules violation. Not sure how much you know about that, Ben, but
I
it
think
is
that sounds
kind
about
of
right. Nothing that rises to the level of anything that would be beyond a warning, but, this is clearly just, like, both of these players, if they had realized what happened, would have put it in exile. We've played with them often enough to know this.
yeah, absolutely. Seems like grief is in play though. That could really wind up changing the texture of this game, but um,
Sam
you know,
comes in response to Grief, though, so notably not going to get discarded here.
although he takes his pest control, which would have answered the Orc Army.
Yeah.
So he's attacking here. I'm thinking we're going to see block and a return of the Sam. I would assume. Nick's thinking about it, so he blocks, and before damage is going to bounce.
Yeah, he's thinking about it. Hey, this Orc Army isn't exactly going away, so trading with it isn't unreasonable, but yeah, I mean, bringing it back means you'll keep having the utility of being able to level up the ring, play Sam, return permanents if you get them, that kind of thing. So we are scooping it up. We didn't find an answer.
Yeah, not having a second blocker available for Menace on the Grief, which is exiled theoretically. Tough
Yeah,
there, but maybe Nick can bounce back in these second two games.
yeah, it is rough to miss that when it seemed like it was the reason that this game was over now rather than potentially later. But I mean, there was still quite a lot of work in that Nick had to do to truly stabilize, especially being at 2 or 1. Like if we're considering the
Right.
post crack fetch, like Cody can draw Bowmasters, he can draw more threats like Troll or something. There's just going to be a number of turns that have to go by before Nick feels like he's truly safe.
Oh yeah, not out of the weeds by any stretch.
Let's take a look
I'm
at the
thinking,
sideboards here.
yeah, I was just about to say, I'm thinking that Nick's sideboard, we're probably gonna see some amount of graveyard hate. These containment priests look pretty appealing to me. Are you seeing anything else, Ben?
I see Containment Priest. I think that we can probably bring in Surgicals, even if they pivot. Like, it doesn't cost too much to bring in Surgicals. Um, I don't know what you're supposed to bring in Triumph of St. Catherine for. I see it in control decks a bunch that have, like, Beanstalk or more ways to manipulate the top of the deck. But this has plenty enough. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I definitely.
Triumph coming in here.
Yeah,
Maybe.
you're definitely bringing in containment priests. You're almost certainly bringing in some number of surgicals, and I'm not sure what else beyond that.
Yeah, definitely. I personally would be inclined to bring in Triumph St. Catherine in the idea that it serves a similar role as it does against Delver, where it's just a harder to remove threat that makes combat really awkward. It's obviously not good against something like Atraxa, but it's fantastic against
Brief
something
Bowmaster.
meager like
Yeah.
Grief or Bowmasters, or if he's expecting something like Murktide, even then it staves the bleeding a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it. It'll be interesting to see what Nick brought in here. I think the Re-scaminator deck is pretty light traditionally on hard removal. Maybe they run a Dismember. Some lists might run a Snuff Out, but it is, I think, a sticky enough threat that makes combat just awkward enough that we might see it. And
Yeah,
then
you're right.
from yeah, and from the Scaminator side, we're probably just going a little lighter on the scam package and focusing on bringing in threats like Barktide, Brazen Borrower as a form of interaction. Are you seeing anything else?
No, I pretty much agree with you there. I think that makes a lot of sense. You want to be in the driver's seat. You want to put in threat after threat. You want to dodge hate cards, and you want to keep the scam game plan alive. I think you're generally looking pretty good in this matchup if you don't draw particularly poorly as their Scaminator player, so we'll see how it goes. We're pondering here. Looking at
The
the hand.
basics are nice in this matchup.
True. And this list does have a few basics. It has 4 basics. 2 islands, a plains, and a swamp. That's enough basics to really be able to play around Wasteland. It's very nice to be able to have that utility. We're pondering again, so the Esper Legends deck getting to sculpt a little bit against the Scaminator player, it's always a good feeling, especially when you don't get like Grief Scam turn 1. You may want to be wary of like an end of turn Entomb or a turn 2 like Troll Reanimate or something, but we are going to try and waste that C and see what happens. We are going to brainstorm in response. Okay, looking for action.
Oh, Cody's just most likely going to be prioritizing hitting his land drops, finding more cantrips or cheap threats.
Yep,
Um,
got to get going.
see, yeah, we'll see what the follow up is from him after losing his land. So we're not brainstorm locked. Even have a fetch to shuffle if we don't like the other card down there, and a flood strand and a pass back from
We do
Nick. So
fetch before we draw, so he didn't like those cards, so. Or that card. Samwise is Samwise and Bowmasters are both things that we can be doing here. Oh, we are trying to go for an Undeterred Entomb. And funny enough, Samwise can go
yeah,
get
that
back to
just
fetch.
resolves. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting a Trox on the bin. So now would be a good time for that surgical.
Surgical would be
So.
huge here, no doubt. We pretty. It's always hard to know if they are going to go for it the next turn. They usually have it because, they have so many reanimation spells, but we're going to see a fetch here in response to a reanimate on this Traxa. Nick needs something to prevent this from coming into play, or without swords, it's going to be a really fast clock. So, going for a scrub land, maybe indicating
Well, this just gets your whole
something like a
mana.
containment priest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be a Containment Priest. I think that's what that is. Yes, that's the art that's showing up in the deck list.
That's the containment priest, but we have force for it. Oh dang. And looks like it's coming back.
Yeah.
She's here to party.
She's drawing, 5 or 6 cards or whatever.
Let's see what the hits are.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
even have
2 reanimate it effects, a cantrip, and a creature of some kind in a wasteland, basically. Not even taking the Archon without a way to discard it.
yeah, probably gonna go for a ponder here. We'll see. I don't know what the rest of the hand looks like, but you've got your big baddie in play now. All you really want to do is dig for counter magic to protect it, right?
Yeah, taking Ponder even as a blue card here to represent that you potentially have another force or could draw another force is a bigger game than another reanimate would be right now.
Right. So we do take ponder. Pretty good hits off this Atraxa. And now Nick is looking for swords. It's kind of swords or bust at this point, right?
Do
And
you waste the
Wasteland taking
scrubland
him off
here?
his white source.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think you will. Yeah. It's too risky to let him on top with white mana, I think. He
But he
has
was
Tundra
holding
of
it.
Swords, though. So we're thinking about this,
Oh,
actually.
we do force it.
Oh,
We do pitch that Ponder.
okay. So I thought it was going to resolve, but it does not, it appears. We'll see if Nick has a response to this force. I'm not sure if he does. He's checking his sideboard there. He has a brainstorm.
Ah, that's what that is.
Yeah, Nick really likes his all art foil versions of cards. He's put a lot of thought and care into this deck. It's sweet to watch him play with it. He's very proficient
Oh yeah.
at these Esper decks. So it looks like that is going to be countered. So that's pretty bad news for Nick. I don't know what
Yeah.
exactly the brainstorm looked at. I didn't get a good see at it, but
And we just
if
played
he's
a land, so
locked
we
under
can't
a
even crunch.
brainstorm,
Yeah, we can't crack anything. So
yeah, if he is locked under this brainstorm without another removal spell, this Trax is going to kill him really quickly.
feels like in this game, both players are sort of just gone through the motions about what they have to do. Right? It's like you've got to try and get the attracts out there. You've got to force the containment priest. You got to play the containment priest. You got to play the swords. There's the big thing. There's the fight that we're having over it, and it seems like Nick has lost that fight, and we're just taking 7 to the face.
Uh, a lot of the games that I've played against Re-scaminator feel very similar to this one, where the threat is just so efficient and the counter magic to back it up is so good that yeah, the game just gets compressed into this place where you're not really given the breathing room or the opportunity to make decisions such as, oh, a prismatic ending. Maybe that'll be interesting on a later turn or what have you. It's like I need swords right now or I die.
Yeah, and in fairness, I mean, there's a lot of games where this plays out where Risque Barrier doesn't have double counterspell backup for the Atraxa, and a lot of games, even if you're looking from the Riscaminator's perspective, where Nick doesn't have both Containment Priest and Swords, for instance. So the fight can play out in a lot of different ways, but the point is that it basically just has to happen. Is that a Thoughtseize effect that I see, or
It's a
something?
surgical. We're
It's
having
like
a
we're looking
little.
at it.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
surgical. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the video gets a little
Yeah, it
grainy through
looks
this
like
section.
we're
Forces? No. Yeah? Seems like those forces are getting exiled.
and the grip from Cody is still super stacked. I think I see 2 Bowmasters, a Dothy Voidwalker, maybe an
Maybe
Animate Dead is in there. I think that's
maybe a troll? No, maybe that's just
yeah.
another Bowmaster. It's Lord of the Rings frame. Only one land though. he's been getting wastelanded a couple of times. If Nick can rip a couple more wastelands in addition to finding the Swords to Plowshares, then maybe he'll have the time he needs to buy his way back in. Looking less and less likely by the turn, though. Something comes down for 2 mana. Oh, it's a Murktide. We're delving for a Murktide. Yeah.
If this could be an 8/8, or
I don't think so. I think a
7/7
Wasteland
even.
got exiled. Yeah, 7/7. So it'll trade with the Atraxa.
It'll trade with it. Would die either way for what that's worth, even if it was an 8/8. But,
Oh yeah, death touch on a 7/7. I
Oh.
keep forgetting. 7/7s usually have death touch just by virtue of being 7/7s.
Right. The more text, the better. So Nick does get a chump in there. He is gonna need now to hit some land drops, hopefully. And I think I see a triumph, so maybe we did bring that in here, which is gonna look pretty good after pondering, being able to set it up.
Yeah.
Find our land.
Is that a fetch though? So you can't quite set up the triumph off of a fetch.
There's a miracle trigger, and we're paying for 2 to cast this triumph.
Oh,
Seems
yeah.
like the coast is clear here for this to resolve. We're fetching in response, perhaps just playing out one of our bowmasters. I don't think he had a force when he got surgical. Maybe he had one draw step, but I thought they were extracted, so I don't know.
Yeah, they were
what
extracted.
what
He
the
didn't have a
move is gonna
force.
be.
So
Okay. Yeah, it's just gonna be a bowmaster, so
yeah, that's what we were talking about. This triumph is gonna look really good in this race here against this bowmasters. Can't block profitably, gain life every turn.
yeah. Yeah, and when these games get scrappy, being able to put your 2 mana threat into play that's larger and has relevant keyword in stabilizing a race is pretty good. But here comes the
Not as good
Atraxa
as getting
again.
another Atraxa on the board, yeah. Like, we're just gonna draw another 4 or 5 cards. Just for the privilege of coming in the battlefield.
Is he playing multiple Atraxas then? Because the first one was... Oh no, the first one died to the Murktide,
Yeah.
so it just stayed in the graveyard.
No, there's
Yeah.
only one Atraxa.
That's tough.
Yeah.
We're gonna see another big reveal here.
Yeah, so you're taking the grief, you're taking the land. What, maybe another reanimate effect? No, brainstorm and yeah, animate. So yeah, one more animate effect. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, and all of a sudden the triumph is just not good enough.
That's the thing about Atraxa too, is like you have to fight over Atraxa because you know it's gonna be bad. And when you lose that fight, the Atraxa player just gets so many cards. It's like it just buries you in card advantage after the fact.
Yeah, I mean a multi-format staple, 4 of in Oath Intel and Vintage, huge player in Legacy, great in Modern.
Standard
I
even.
don't know if I don't know. Yeah,
Now,
even
they ramp
Standard,
into
just
it.
being a legend. Yeah, it's crazy good. It's really interesting to see how much Grizzlebrand has fallen off over time.
Bristleman draws you the
such a
cards, not as an
central
ATB.
element. Right.
Yeah.
Can't Pithing Needle and Atraxa, right?
Yeah. Bristleman doesn't pitch to force.
Right. Of course it pitches to force on top of everything else. And we're gonna see grief here. I think Nick only has 2 cards in hand.
Yep. This is why we picked up the grief. We picked up grief black card. We have so many cards in hand. Let's just get what's left out of Nyx.
Looks
Difficult
like
to
the
see.
holdings are Sam and
Rainstorm or
Snapcaster.
Snapcaster? Ah, yes.
Snapcaster would have been a good one.
Yeah, Snapcaster the swords. I didn't take a close look at the graveyard while we were exiling from the Murktide, since that's when the quality started to be a little less
Drop a little
readable.
bit, yeah.
But I think it does look like you left the swords at the graveyard for exactly this scenario, right? You draw the Snapcaster later, go buy back your swords. Murktide only needs to be a 7/7 to trade with Atraxa, as we were talking about, so.
We see another reanimate here on that grief. Gonna strip the Sam, I would assume. We did, and now fetch from Nick.
It's
So,
basically top deck swords or bust here.
oh, yeah. I don't think he even has anything like Terminus in his list. That it wouldn't really work in a list like this. So it's gotta be Swords to Plowshares, and he's got one turn to draw it from what I can tell.
Yep. We had a Ponder card there on top, I think, so we're fetching. I think this is a Meticulous Archive. This is Surveil Land, so we get 2 looks at it. We can even Sauron's Ransom if we find it, because the nature of this Factor Fiction effect means that they can't really, like, if there's a swords in the pile, they can't show you a pile without swords and, like, hide the swords. You're gonna take it if that's the only out you have, so. But they can put all the lands in one pile and the swords in the other pile, so you wouldn't be able to cast it after the fact.
On this Ponder, I wonder what Nick is seeing. It's gonna be
Maybe
a
more like
shuffle.
card selection?
Hmm.
I don't know.
That would make sense. Like if Ponder into Ponder or something like that. But he's gonna ping him. Army is gonna grow. And
Yeah.
that's gonna be the match.
Yep, good showing from both players.
I realized when I fetched the scrub land, like at first I pulled an eye.
All right, we're going to head into round 4 here. Again, for those watching on YouTube, if you check the video description, we have a link tree. All of our links to Twitter, Twitch, Discord, etc.
So this is you, Jason. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your build of beans here?
Sure, yeah, this is me on the left playing 4-color Beanstalk, basically splashing red for 4th Aerlingus, and then a couple of sideboard cards that are relevant. And other than that, pretty much a stock up the Beanstalk list with Terminus, Triumph of St. Catherine, a bunch of counter spells, and of course up the Beanstalk as your draw engine, plus Leyline Binding.
Yeah, a lot of white removal then.
Unfortunately, it looks like the video is still degraded at this point, but hopefully we can make it through this match.
Oh yeah, we'll do our best. We'll be more vigilant about calling out cards when the quality is like this as we recognize them, just so that our viewers at home can follow the action.
Absolutely. So Cody's taking a mulligan here, it looks like.
Done with that.
Alright, let's do it.
And who's starting us off? It's gonna be Cody. Passing it back.
Oh, it'd be great. It'd be perfect.
Cracking for Entomb.
Uh-oh. Entomb.
Doing a bit of shortcutting here.
Tomb is
You're
gonna get
forcing the
forced, though.
Entomb, yeah.
So we're 19 all.
What's your thought on forcing the Entomb versus forcing a reanimation spell, Jason?
I tend to
Yeah, you
prioritize
definitely
stopping the
force the
Entomb.
Entomb. Yeah. You gotta force the Entomb, right? Because there's 4 of those in the deck, and there's 8 reanimation spells, so...
Yeah, and if you force a reanimation spell, you leave the dude in the graveyard, and then those are still online. So,
Right.
just gotta cut it off at the head here. Get a brainstorm from Cody. Take it a look, see what we see. That's a swamp, I
Drop and
think.
passing
Yeah.
back. Yeah. Yeah, that's a basic.
Go.
We see Forest on the other side from Jason here, it looks like.
We're passing
No
back
land,
again.
though.
We are still representing Bowmasters, Hardcast days. I would be unsurprised if Cody jams a Bowmasters here. Yeah.
Hit you for 1. 18.
Alright, there's the
So
clock.
that resolves. We're gonna make an army. Yep. One thing that is gonna be different in this matchup compared to the matchup against Nick is that the Esper deck is not running sweepers. Aside from, I guess you might say pest control is a sweeper, but the build that Jason here has of this Beanstalk control deck has 2 Terminus in the main deck, which also white removal, but just super cheap and efficient. Take your whole board out. You have a Grief, you have a Bowmasters, whatever it may be, it's gone. So that's a card that I would assume from Jason's side, we really want to see in this matchup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the Endurance
Looks
is
like
here
the
as well.
grip is. Yeah, the main deck Endurance, I love this. I think the metagame is really in a place right now where main decking a card like this makes a ton of sense. We see Solitude as well, although no white card to go with it, it appears.
yeah. So I'm getting griefed here, and this hand was especially good for this matchup. I had 2 endurances, 2 force negations, and the solitude there.
I wonder what you grieve from this situation. You take the Endurance so it can't get evoked, but I mean, you can get hard casts. It just doesn't look that great for you. You could take the Solitude, that's probably what I would consider here. Letting the Force of
If
Negation
you're
ride.
missing, yeah, if you're missing land drops and your opponent is already on 3, building up even to a hard cast Solitude, it's tough.
So weird.
If there's no second Endurance, that seems like a pretty easy take.
Yeah.
But like you said, Endurance is just castable at this point. Sure, Daze might interact with it, but if Jason draws the land next turn, then the Endurance is going to be really easy to get off. And so we do see him take Solitude, which I like that
I
play.
agree,
I think,
yeah.
Targeting Grief. Huh?
and we're going to
We're gonna try and
animate
do-
dead something here too.
We're gonna try and get the
I would
Grief
assume
back,
this
I
is
think.
catching.
So
Yeah,
he
this is
actually
gonna
targeted
catch
my
some interaction.
solitude with this reanimate.
Oh, okay, so yeah. You'll be forced to Endurance yourself if you want to stop this.
Yeah.
Well, you also have Force Negation, right?
That's true. It does seem intuitively stronger to me to put one of your 2 Endurances on the battlefield and just
I agree.
blank this enchantment here.
There's the day.
But yeah, I mean, going back to the Thoughtseize, it's sort of general Thoughtseize policy to take, like, almost no matter what your opponent's hand is, you take what they have less of in it, right? You try and give them some weakness, some hole that you can try and plow through. as the Re-scaminator opponent to leverage that information. And so
This is on
that's what
the
we're doing here.
yeah, and then
We're
He did have the day's backup, so it cost me quite a few cards to get through this turn.
that's still a pretty good.
oh yes, you have to force a
bad.
negation the days. So
Yeah.
there it
This is
goes.
how we get rid of all the cards.
Yeah, that was a
think
good
I
hand.
prefer holding up.
I knew it. I absolutely.
Yeah, I think I prefer holding up all my mana and just pitch casting force because of days.
Another endurance in your hand. That's all you know. Combat. Yeah.
Because endurance is just getting better with time, right? And it's the same outcome. You just don't play into days to draw a land next turn. I see it both ways, but if he's gonna get, if he has the days, then he's getting the force negation out anyway. If he doesn't have it, sure, there's a lot of upside, but I think with double endurance in hand and only 2 points of pressure on the board when you have a life total that's high enough, I think I tend towards just forcing the thing, maybe instepping an endurance to flush out a days, and then you still have another endurance in hand.
Well, you're a more experienced control player than I am, Taylor, and I think that logic does track. I was sort of greedily looking. It's like, oh, if I get to cast the endurance, I get to have a 3/4 in play, and all of a sudden this race is even-ish and ahead for me, you know. So I would have fallen into the same trap here and
Right.
gotten dazed and gotten my force ripped. So, and it looks like we're going through the motions of this slugfest a little bit. Well, what?
Yeah, we're gonna see a brainstorm here from Cody. Really, right now, something like Archon or Atraxa is probably what we're looking for. The endurance is going to shut down the small creatures pretty hard. Even a grief, once another creature hits the battlefield, can just be totally blanked by endurance. So, and you know he has the second one. So, yeah, I think you really want to hit one of those big monsters pretty quickly here if you're Cody.
He pitched an
'Cause you don't
Atraxa to
have
the
the
Grief
removal
earlier,
deal.
so we only have one big monster left in the deck.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah. This is a tough spot for Cody, I think. We're going to see another days.
Got a 9. Good. Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Really just want to hit a land drop here if you're Jason, I think. Although
Yeah.
any miracle could be reasonable too. Triumph off the top would be huge.
Are you attacking me or? Oh.
We do find the land, which is good news.
Another one. Another one.
And another Bowmaster on Instep.
Yeah, so both these Bowmasters are a point in Cody's favor here. They are pressuring Jason to not be able to find cantrips and use them as effectively.
Yeah, my life total is at 9 at this point. We forgot to keep the phone app up. Oh, so this was an interesting point in the game. We realized that Cody had inadvertently had another copy of Bowmaster in his deck from when he reanimated it from Nick from the prior game. So we had to get a judge over to help us sort it out.
Oh no, were they using the same sleeves?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh no, classic mix-up. I've done that before. I've been on the receiving and the giving end of messing up, like shuffling someone's card into my deck or my card getting shuffled into their deck. Black sleeves are my preferred sleeves too, and that just happens sometimes.
Yeah. Very easy.
I've run over to to the judge to find, the pairings just to go return cards to my last opponent. It's like, I gotta go get them their cards back. I just stole their cards. Like, it's always a silly feeling when that happens. Binding coming down. Presuming on Bowmasters, yep. Binding's good.
Brainstorm again.
Brainstorming away.
A lot of cantrips here from Cody, sculpting what I assume to be a hand that can put more threats into play because the endurance is just locking down the board right now.
Theodorus is locking down the board right now, but he did strip a lot of cards from Jason's hand earlier, and so he does have the time and the ability to look for more threats and keep putting the pressure on. I think it's a pretty even game at this point.
They were still in the random
Oh, we do
Yeah,
see a
definitely.
Terminus
It's
get
hard to
flashed in Jason's
tell.
hand. Sorry, continue.
Okay. Oh yeah, I was just agreeing. Yeah, it's hard to tell right now who's ahead. I think it's gonna come down to whether or not Jason can get this terminus off. If Cody puts in more threats, or on alternatively whether or not Jason can spike something like a triumph, or build into an Uro and get the ball rolling that way.
Go ahead. Don't take it too seriously. We're just chatting.
Haven't seen Beanstalk in this game yet.
Yeah, the Bowmaster kind of shut that down for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's swords. So freeing up some cantrips here potentially. Should we draw them?
Don't you do it. Don't you do it. I'm going to reconsider my decision.
Yep, that looks like a ponder.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a great sequence there from Jason. Definitely wanted to get that Bowmasters off the battlefield so we can find some more threats, find some more answers.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped ahead there,
looks
but
like-
you're right. We hit the Bowmaster with the Swords to Plowshare.
Yeah.
And now the Endurance is back to being the biggest game in town, so it's just going to be attacking with impunity here. Looks like we cycled a Troll on the end step. Yeah, go pick up an Underground Sea. And we're entombing.
So really just hoping to hit Reanimator Animate dead here off the top.
Yeah. Multiple threats in the graveyard at the same time. Usually a good thing, but we know there are main deck Endurances. We don't know how many, though, so... If you're Cody, you have to assume that 2 is about the limit for any sane control deck, but I'm not really sure. I don't exactly know this kind of thing.
I thought I did. Yeah, I got an Archon.
I think main decking 2 is pretty reasonable. Aside from some deck like maybe a Lurin, which is not even really played, I don't know why you go over 2. I run 2 in the sideboard of Beanstalk when I've played it recently, and I've often felt like, wow, it would be nice to have this in the main deck. Looks like we're getting a
Reanimated.
concession
Yeah.
So
here.
at this point, what happened here? Cody reanimated an Archon of Cruelty and forgot that he was at 8 life.
I talked in my head how I want to.
Oh, he got domed! Oh, no. I didn't realize that. Yeah, so that's where having the life total on the screen would have helped us evaluate the situation.
Right.
Or maybe even help the players evaluate the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think after the game we were talking, he just for some reason had it in his head that he was thinking Archon was a 7 mana spell, not 8.
Ah.
We'll just try it like that.
Freeze reanimate seems it is not in fact free. So sideboarding here is kind of interesting. I would think that we're bringing in Carpet of Flowers, probably Flusterstorm, just to fight over things like Entomb or to fight over cantrips. I could see bringing in a Pyroblast, maybe. The Surgicals and Veils are obviously great, so I think that's probably what I would have brought in. Did you have any different ideas than that, Jason, or something like that about what you were thinking?
Yeah, that's pretty much the plan. I think I didn't bring in both surgicals. I think I just brought in one. Because a lot of times there's, as you pointed out, there's a lot of good stuff you can bring in, so I kind of struggle with what to take out. But I usually trim a couple of Beanstalks because they're not as good with Bowmasters. Trim maybe, a couple of Force of Wills.
I think trimming forces makes a lot of sense. the force effect's obviously very strong, but
Yeah, I'll try it.
him to Turok-ing yourself, so to speak, feels bad in a matchup where they have grief in their deck. So we'll
Yeah,
see exactly how these sideboard cards come up, but
it is true that in this deck, as compared to the previous matchup, Jason's deck has a lot more ways to deal with a resolve that attracts or Archon of Cruelty, or even an Archon of Cruelty on the stack with endurances and stuff like that. So it definitely makes sense to board out some of your forcibles here in favor of other cheaper interaction from a card advantage standpoint. We're getting griefed here, and we see fourth year Lingus, some lands, a Beanstalk. Is that an Uro? And some other card I can't recognize.
Yeah, that's right. Uro, Beanstalk, fourth Aerolingus, and I can't recall what the other card is.
Fourth is annoying. I think we take fourth for sure.
I've got the whole
Is that
scam
Veil?
package going down.
And then
It kind of looks like Veil of Summer.
Yeah, very well
Eh,
could be.
we'll do the beanstalk. Okay.
and we're taking. Oh yeah, we
So we're
we
taking
scammed it.
the two best cards.
Beanstalk
Yeah,
and
I
fourth.
think Cody just shortcutted that once he saw there was no force in hand. It was just like, I'm going to do this, take your two best cards, which were the fourth and the Beanstalk. So that checks out.
Yeah, leaving Jason with a bunch of reactive cards and not really any way to make threats faster than Cody can clock him with this grief. We're pondering. Yep, getting in there. Still no life total app, but we'll have to remember.
Yeah, you'd think the producer of the show would know to have their life total on the phone.
Hey, I mean, it's a long tournament. You're in the hot seat. It's a good day for you to be
That's true.
streaming in round 4 here.
Yeah, the Beanstalk deck ran well this day. I was really happy. Ended up 3-1-1 on the day. Deck felt good. There's an unlicensed Hers from Cody.
To bring in Hearst in this matchup, I don't know what you're really that concerned about in the graveyard other than Uro, but you do respect it enough to force it. I guess it's just a sticky, annoying permanent to have him play that in a long game is going to make things a bit of a headache for you. But
Yeah, it's
we'll
basically
see a
just going to get
land
hosed by
impasse.
Leyline Binding, though, so maybe a little bit better against something like Nick's deck than against Jason's.
14.
Yeah, forcing the Hearse did feel aggressive. I can't recall exactly why I did it. It seems like the what was in my hand informed it. I can't recall exactly though.
I mean, it seemed like you had Uro in your hand, right? So it's like if the
Right.
Hearst stays, then you're just never going to get your Uro in play, and
Yeah.
so that just definitely feels bad.
Good.
Here
Murktide coming
though,
in.
here comes Murktide. Yeah,
Another threat
we'll
on the
see.
board.
There's so many answers in the Beans deck that could clean up this board. Terminus being the
The
prime
best one,
one,
yeah.
but even just swords or binding on something like Murktide take the pressure off a little bit. The grief represents a clock, but not a super fast clock. So we'll see how much the Murktide winds up
Binding on
playing into
Murktide.
this. We do have binding for it, so that must have been in hand, and we're thinking we can cover that.
We just need to get to Uro, start gaining some life, start drawing some cards. Because you can't Thoughtseize an Uro. Like, this is one of the better ways to deal with these effects. You're just gonna put it in the graveyard, and then it's just gonna come right back, bigger and stronger than ever.
I'm gonna step away for 1 minute. I'll be right back.
6.
Grief again. So
Pass.
Oh, but the
We're
arrow
looking
is
at just
pitched
any
to the
removal
force.
spell. Yeah, Uro's not in the graveyard right now.
Or
So
in
we're
hand.
just
I thought it
looking
was in
for
hand still.
removal
Sorry.
spells.
Brainstorm
Oh yeah,
responds to
no worries.
Bowmaster, and then that seems like it was a Veil of Summer from earlier, because it seems like that's coming down now.
Trigger draw. So when this comes in, I'm targeting you. So yeah.
But that's still on the stack.
We'll see if Cody just pings himself and grows his own Orc Army here.
It seems like he's doing a response
Right?
to the first trigger, and then he's going to, probably ping himself or ping his grief, and then ping the Orc Army twice. In situations like this, it's like...
Or
And then you'll have another trigger from Veil. From me drawing from Veil. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That didn't happen. Yeah.
It looks like there's a bit of a discussion about like what the Veil was in response to. Yeah, okay.
2, 3. So now you have 3 more triggers.
so there should be 3 more Bowmaster triggers here, right?
Yeah.
It's still like a 3/3.
Check with the judge. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like whether if you block the first ETB, then they get another one from the Veil of Summer, and if you do it before they come in, they get to use the first ETB on the Grief. Or if you like wait for the card draw triggers to resolve from the Brainstorm, you can like get 3 at once, and then you'll get another one off of the Veil of Summer. But like if they think that you're gonna do that, then they can be heads up and target their own Orc Army, and you don't get to blank any triggers. The timing on Bowmasters versus Veil of Summer is just a little bit weird, depending on the life totals and like how much damage you're willing to take and how big you want the Orc Army to be on future terms. I've done this math a couple of times in the Storm seat.
Yeah, the timing can be a little tricky. We're really hoping. Okay, there's binding again. It looks like.
Oh, we are getting the
taking
Orc
out
Army.
that 4/4.
Bounce this one.
Yeah.
Oh, we're bouncing the other binding. The one holding the Murktide. Not going to be the hugest Murktide, but it is going to be there. It's kind of like playing your Brazen Borrower twice. Get 2 3/3 flyers into play.
4.
We are forcing that, though.
That Brazen Borrower should be in
Should be in the graveyard. If it's countered, it shouldn't go on an adventure. That is one of the reasons to force it. But the life total pressure is, it's going to get to him anyway.
Yeah. Got to be careful about putting cards in the right zones here, but we'll see what happens here in Game 3. I'm thinking that in the last game, it was just a matter of that early grief, having to use removal on other cards like the Bowmasters and the Murktide were just kind of a distraction towards that grief whittling down on Jason's life total until it was just enough pressure to get over the finish line there in Game 2.
It's a hard hand to keep on the draw, I think, because it had Veil of Summer and it had stuff to do, but Veil of Summer doesn't really work on the draw if they open with Grief. So, as we just saw here, it's just like, oh, we'll take your 2 best cards, leave you with the Veil of Summer, and just start getting in there. Maybe it's right to mulligan to a Force. Maybe it's right to, like, keep that and hope that you can do something against slower hands. I'm not exactly the person who plays these kinds of decks very often, but on the play, Jason's not going to get Grief Scan before he has mana available to respond to it. So that's definitely going to be an advantage in this match in this game for sure.
I'll try it.
Here in Game 3, whether or not Jason or Cody can take this down. I guess right now your record is 2-1 or 2-0-1, Jason.
Yes, that's right. I think at this point I was 201.
Here for Cody.
I'll keep. I'm just deciding what to throw back, I guess.
Yeah, I really think this is one of the more interesting matchups in Legacy right now. There's a lot of back and forth to it. I often find that you get into Game 3 scenarios like this, and from the Beanstalk perspective, that's kind of what you want to. That's kind of where you want to
Okay.
be, is getting to this Game 3 where
Okay.
you know you have the good sideboard cards. We're on the play, and
Go ahead.
we're gonna get a shot here at shutting down the Re-scaminator player, and from the
Looks like a
Re-scaminator
head
side,
made
we're gonna see.
mulling over a fourth yearlingus. Is that right?
Catherine.
I want to say that's a.
Oh, Catherine.
Yeah, I want to say that's a Triumph. Yeah. So
Get the beans
here's a
in play.
Beanstalk, which we've been missing for the rest of this match so far. I've not seen that card yet, so we'll see that potentially do some work here. It's very hard for the Re-scaminator player to remove a Beanstalk. Once it's resolved, you're really just looking at Brazen Borrower, and using that on a Beanstalk feels very much like a losing battle to me. So it's interesting what you said, Jason, about potentially boarding down on Beanstalks. I only ever bring Beanstalk out if I'm playing specifically something like Storm, something that's going to kill me potentially on turn 1. I know Bowmasters is like a consideration of like, well, it's drawing me cards, growing their army, but you have all the removal to keep the orc out of play in your deck if you can draw it and sculpt towards it. Beanstalk is just the engine that in the late game, if it gets scrappy, is going to really pull you far ahead. Like in that last game, right, if there had been a Beanstalk, all those Force of Wills would have kept you on card parity or even card advantage. And in this game, we'll see how it plays out, but
It's going to
definitely
give you a
card you wanna have
chance.
yeah, definitely a card you want to have in play in these blue mirrors, I think.
Because
He
we just
does
got a
have-
troll animated. Is that what that is? That's a troll?
Yeah, that's a troll for Cody, which is really what you want, is this really fast, aggressive clock. You don't see White Man on the other side yet, so that's a good sign. You're thinking this troll's, even with an animate dead on it, could easily get in for 10 damage. So we'll find out if Jason can come up with an answer for this troll. Looks like we are going to see a land drop here, and it's Tundra.
That's Tundra. And we are swordsing
Yeah.
it. We are forcing the swords.
Playing around days here is smart, leaving open that hedge maze, but here's Veil of Summer.
Okay.
And Veil's going to look pretty good here, drawing a card
I got a 23.
and removing that big threat. So
Draw.
now we're set up. Board is clear. We're ahead on lands, and we have a Beanstalk in play.
Yeah, I see Jason as
Cody-
being in the driver's seat right now.
Definitely, yeah. We'll see what Cody's follow-up is here. Could be sitting on a Bowmasters, trying to start growing an army with the Beanstalk in play on the other side. Could be a good play. Maybe we'll see a sideboard card come out here, something like a Murktide Regent. It's going to be the hearse again.
Alright. And we're reanimating the troll.
Oh no! My triumph! Yeah.
He's
Well, the
targeting my
troll is
triumph.
exiled, right?
Oh, that's right. The Triumph got milled over. That is a bit of a risk when you do that.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
there's the
Jason.
Terminus
There's
off.
Terminus
I'm opening up
anyway.
my deck.
Not your deck, Cody. That's goes under his deck. Yeah.
See, and we're drawing a card from Terminus there. That's a great exchange for Jason. So.
But the hearse is still in play. This is, I guess, what we're talking about, it being resilient, right? This hearse is just going to keep growing, and it's here.
Yeah, it's here. It makes future threats more of a liability for sure. It's almost like pseudo haste, right? When you are able to,
Yeah,
For
I don't.
you know,
10 power
build
creature
up
or
a bunch
whatever.
of counters on it.
It's not getting much better.
Right. So it's an annoying card for Jason to deal with here. But as long as there's no creature
Let's
on the
get
battlefield, there's some breathing room.
swords and veil.
I guess also um, Mystic Sanctuary being a slight but not a relevant consideration here, being able to remove some cards to prevent
Yeah.
any kind of
Good.
buyback effect later on could be good for Cody. We're gonna see
Yeah.
Dothy come down and immediately eat removal.
Yep. Yeah, we're turning off Mystic Sanctuary here. We're turning off Uro, as we mentioned in the previous game. This makes Hearse, I guess, a sideboard consideration. Yeah, we're gonna take 2 more instants
Could be relevant.
that matter.
Go.
Swords and brainstorm.
Brainstorm.
And 19.
Fetching on the land. Cody has like 1 card left in hand, it seems like. Jason has a few. Yeah, that's the
I
Beanstalk life
think,
for you.
yeah, I think Cody's down to 1 card in hand, or maybe,
Oh, that's the grief for
yeah, he
hardcasting the
hasn't.
grief.
Okay, it's a plan. Don't know exactly what's in Jason's grip right now. We'll see if there's a response to the grief. Maybe once
I
it
think
hits
I
the
saw a force in
battlefield,
there, so
or
it seems like we might be fetching to force and draw a card, or even solitude and draw a card would be pretty nasty here.
yeah, solitude would be kind of bonkers. Um, maybe it is just force though. I mean,
Yep.
hard cast force draw card, totally fine. You know he has nothing in hand to back it up with, so just gonna keep drawing cards, pulling ahead here. Jason has a full grip, and we have a lonely hearse and no cards in hand on the other side. So it's looking pretty good for the Beanstalk deck right now.
Force and terminus.
Yeah. Hearst gonna keep ticking up, keep doing the business. Jason needs to get a creature in play just to have some semblance of a clock, but there's time for that.
Yeah,
Are we binding our own Beanstalk here? Oh no, we're triggering the Beanstalk off the binding. We're trying to get the Hearst. Oh man, we're triggering the Beanstalk again.
Another Beanstalk trigger. Yeah, this is getting pretty out of reach for Cody here, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Depending on whether or not Jason can eventually find a threat here, but you know, the control player doesn't. I mean, win conditions are overrated, right, Ben? You know, like
Yeah.
you're a storm player, you run like 1 main deck win condition and like some ways to grab one out of the sideboard, and that's kind of the mentality of the control deck too. Is like eventually you are gonna find your threat that outclasses your opponent's threats most of the time.
Yep.
We'll see another hardcast grief here, and here's
this time we get the
Solitude
Solitude.
we're waiting on.
Yeah. Still gonna get a card out of Jason's head, but now Jason has the threat, and you know, Cody doesn't have like important cards in the graveyard and no cards in hand, so the clock's just gonna start ticking.
Right. And imagine this game without Beanstalk in play, right? If that's the case, then
We're down
both
7,
top
8
decking
cards
right
at
now.
this point. You know, that's crazy.
Right. And here we're about to progress into beatdown mode from the control side. Gonna attempt to bounce it. That's fine, I'm sure.
Definitely
Sure,
feels
I'll draw
bad to
more
bounce a
cards,
Solitude that draws a card. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like you're gonna
Please
play the
and thank
bar,
you,
it's gonna
right?
come back down and draw a card for the trouble.
Are we cycling Xander's Lounge?
Seems it.
Yeah, I think that was Xander's Lounge being cycled there on the instep by Jason.
I don't know why you think this is
And
every
I'd
white card
assume we're
made
just
or
going to play a
deck
land,
like, what do you
pass
mean?
it back. Maybe there's something like Fourth Aerolingus in the grip to just kill him dead, but
No, we'll just play a Brainstorm.
it's Brainstorm.
we have Solitude Man open in case Bowmasters comes down. There's really no harm in doing this stuff.
Land for turn. Go.
Another borrower.
Resolves, and then I'll fetch to cast it.
Chooses to cast a borrower from hand instead of the one from the adventure. Which seems weird to me.
I'm not sure I understand exactly why you would not just cast the one in exile, but we're gonna find out what the next play is here from Jason. I think, yeah, we're gonna draw a card off the Solitude, remove that guy, and then I think we're probably just gonna pass it back and see what Cody can come up with here. Again, the removal suite in the Re-scaminator deck is pretty anemic compared to a more traditional blue-black control deck, or even something like Death Shadow is going to have Dismembers, Fatal Pushes, what have you. And this deck doesn't, it really relies heavily on Bowmasters, just cheap removal that can ping down a creature, but doesn't have a lot of hard removal. An attempted reanimate will be forced, and looks like that's the
It's
game.
curtains, yeah. Don't know what the life totals were, but it certainly wasn't looking good. And yeah, that's great showing again from everybody. You know, the control deck comes out on top here, grinding out the Re-scaminator deck in the end.
Yep, so that was round
Yeah.
4. We had 5 rounds on the day, so this next round will be our final round. Again, this was our Legacy 1K from Saturday at Point Break Arcade. Shout out to everybody that came out and joined us. This was our first time hosting a Legacy 1K, and we're planning to do another one in the fall time frame, probably in October. So for everybody watching on YouTube, be sure to check the video description for our link tree. Follow us on Twitter, Twitch, and Discord.
Help me remember.
It's really impossible to overstate how great it is to be able to go to a Legacy tournament locally, meet with friends, have a good time. It's just great stuff. We always love new faces coming in. Appreciate the work that you're doing, Jason, to make this all possible. And the local game stores around here do a great job at supporting our community, and we love it. So,
Yep, you know, RL Proxy or not, like there are tournaments of both flavors around here, but keeping Paper Magic alive and well it's got to be our priority for communities like this, and it's just been so great over the past year and a half to be able to have these big events with actual paper legacy cards. This format is great and the people are great, and I hope to see any new faces there in the future. We're going into the last round now, where we have the two controlling decks that we just saw in the previous two squaring off. What do you think looks favored here, Taylor? You have a bit more expertise in this situation than I do, and Jason, you're one. You obviously do as well, and you're sitting here. What do both of you think?
Go ahead, Taylor.
My perspective, I've played against Nick's Esper deck a few times. I think the most problematic card is Samwise, followed by Sauron's Ransom. The Ring Tempts You mechanic is just impossible to interact with once it gets rolling. Any subsequent threat can be really, like you were talking about, Ben, just accruing values, skulking, looting, eventually doming you for a bunch of damage every time your creature connects. Those are the kind of things that, from the control side, you really don't want to see early. The interaction between Karakas and Sam can be really hard. Bowmaster's obviously good against your deck, but like we saw in the last round, the control deck has a lot of ways to fight through a Bowmaster. It's the looping of cards like Samwise and card advantage spells like Sauron's Ransom that are going to pull the Esper player ahead, I think. And from the Esper side, really, you don't want to see up the Beanstalk, right? The namesake card. That card will bury you eventually. And so you're trying to avoid early up the Beanstalks, I would expect if Jason tries to deploy that Nick will fight over it very quickly, should he have the cards to fight over it with. But it's a really great matchup, I think. It's sort of a classic blue mirror. We're seeing white removal, blue counter magic, and really cards like Thoughtseize and Bowmasters on Nick's side give him kind of a different angle versus green cards on Jason's side, like Endurance, Uro, of course, up the
Beanstalk,
Beanstalk.
yeah.
And yeah, and that's those types of cards, sort of those namesake cards, I think are going to be what shines here. We'll
I
see
agree.
who can, yeah, we'll see who can get that advantage rolling first. A quick Bowmasters here from Nick is something he definitely wanted to see though, and this without being removed will give Jason a headache. So
Yeah, we go through the dance in the first few turns of playing some lands, playing some cantrips, a Bowmasters is stuck, and now there's a Caracas on the board. And anytime Nick can be threatening some Samwise tricks if the Bowmasters is killed by more traditional removal, but swords is generally the thing that you're looking out for here, and that's what's going to happen. So I'm not really sure what Sam is going to do in response to the swords.
well,
Greek resolves.
we're gonna have the ring
This will be my ring bearer.
Go on
tempt
those
the
bow-
Bowmaster, so that yeah.
Bowmasters.
Oh, he can bounce it with the Caracas. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. The first level of the ring makes the creature legendary. I always forget that.
Resolves.
Yeah, so smart play there from Nick. We've already got the Caracas Sam loop online, so from Jason's point of view, this has got to be a little concerning. Luckily, we have a Beanstalk to follow it up, but we've got Bowmaster in hand still. We can just hold on to that, shut Jason out of effective cantrips while applying 3 power of pressure every turn. So
Yeah, and without a second white mana, it's like you couldn't swords and then like threaten to swords the Sam afterwards, right? You've given Nick the window to attack with the Caracas, and now the Sam is basically unkillable. Prismatic Ending gonna hit the beans. That's really ideally what you want to be hitting with Prismatic Ending here.
yeah, and we're already kind of looking for Terminus here. I mean, it's not even good against Caracas,
No,
though.
it's not good.
It yeah, it's tricky when the ring gets rolling. It really can provide a big thorn in a control deck side because it's almost like energy where you can't interact with it um, easily at all, and it just sits around and makes all your subsequent Sams and Sauron's ransoms um, even juicier. So at least we're making a land drop here on Jason's side, and looks like we're gonna have to try and take out the Sam, but it's just gonna get bounced. We're gonna see potentially another removal
sword.
spell being pointed at Sam.
Look at all the removal you have to dump in just to deal with this Caracas. Like, this is a land that's tapping to discard removal spells out of your opponent's hand. Absolutely.
Super
Great value.
strong.
Yeah.
Yes. Super strong.
Friggin' Sam loops.
And really, yeah, one Wasteland being the only way for Jason to interact with this Caracas is going to make
And
it.
then the Spell Pierce
the
comes
Spell
down.
Pierce,
Wow.
yeah.
So not only did we put a lot of cards into this fight, we lost it. That just can't feel good.
Yeah, that's really tough spot. So now he's holding Sam Bowmasters, can just crack in here for one and hold open whatever he wants.
With no Beanstalk on the board, we are draining, Jason out of cards over time. And the life total is actually getting, down to 8. You gotta find answers within a few turns, or it's gonna get even dicier.
Trigger?
Yeah.
Mystic Sanctuary. Put swords on top. Hardcast Triumph. And so here Nick would need to find a force or a removal spell of his own, and he definitely has fewer of those than Jason does. But the Sam is going to come down, level up the ring, and so now we have we're going to get a ring bearer with Skulk and Looting, which is going to be a real problem. This Catherine can't block, and it can't attack either because the Sam's just going to block and get bounced. So the Triumph of St. Catherine sure, it looks great. We just spent 5 mana on this card, but it virtually has no effect on the battlefield. It's not really a creature.
This will be my ring card.
Okay.
I go.
Yeah.
For roadblock there, like you said, Sam being able to be returned with Caracas makes the lifelink totally irrelevant. So we'll see Nick. It looks like you may just even have removal for the Triumph. No, it's just a ponder.
I don't know. If I had removal for the Triumph, I might not even cast it. What's it doing? We get to attack with Orcish Bowmasters and loot. And then
Cards in hand.
see what happens from there.
Tree.
Yeah.
If you removed it, you would increase the clock. It's true. Because you get to attack with all of your stuff.
Yeah. Right. He
But your
gains
removal is
5
sword, so you
versus
make him
5.
gain, yeah, like,
Combat.
Combat.
1 loot.
yeah. We're just attacking with
It
Orc
makes
Armor.
your subsequent attacks better, I guess. But yeah, here's the loot.
You can't
and we're
block.
discarding a Brainstorm.
7.
Get him.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I was talking about
Yeah.
with the ring tempting mechanic being really tricky in Nick's deck. I mean, once honestly, the scariest card in his deck is Caracas. Like,
Yeah.
when I see Caracas come down, I'm like, well, there's 4 Sams. He's gonna find a Sam, and now this Caracas is gonna make the ring even more insane. So we're gonna see a block and a return, just like we talked about.
And I don't think there are
that's gonna
wastelands
blank-
in Jason's deck to deal with the Caracas. And even if there aren't, like, Sam can get back Caracas if you hold up the mana for it, if you're really concerned about this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And here's what we're talking about. We're throwing the Triumph in, it's getting blocked, and we're threatening the bounce. And it seems like we might try and remove something else. Oh, we're going to remove the Bowmasters now that you can't bounce that. Another Bowmasters. What are we trying to do with this Bowmasters?
Yeah. That happens.
Trigger target you.
Yeah. Go to 6.
Will the army go face? Yeah.
Targeting that.
Resolve.
Okay.
So at least we're getting rid of one of them.
I'm gonna return Sam to him.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sam is going to hand. It's still just really problematic though for Jason. I don't know how you get out of this squeeze.
Because we weren't able
He's
to
up
gain
on
the life,
cards.
no matter what happened with this attack, and now the Bowmasters is getting in for 4. We have Sam and Caracas, in play, ready to do this again.
That's good.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Crack and fetch. Doesn't look like Jason has very many cards in his hand either, after all this.
I feel like maybe 1 or 2 cards left in the grip over there. And with this board state and Jason being at 6, I feel like we're looking at exactly Terminus, which even then may not be good enough with Sam in hand. I wouldn't expect to see Nick play into a sweeper. I mean, he's got Caracas Sam online, so he can just kind of go to town here with his...
Yeah,
the
you
Orc
definitely
Army
don't play
and-
it before the draw step. You, at the very least, will probably try and play it to block the St. Catherine and then bounce the legend again. Either blocking with Bowmasters
Right.
if you leave it back, or more likely just attacking with both, blocking with the Sam, and then bouncing the Sam back.
Untap. Upkeep.
No miracle draw. 3 cards in the hand. One of them's a land.
Go ahead.
Ships it back. Doesn't seem like there's help. So here's where we can try and play Sam and skulk up the 3/3. Nick seems to agree.
Cards in hand.
I have 2 cards.
And that's going to be an unblockable lethal attacker, so... Here's
Solitude,
Solitude, though.
Cast off.
Results. Gain 1.
can block the 3/3 even if it's skulked now. What did he take damage from? Oh, did he fetch?
He gained a life from the Solitude Exile.
I go 10
Oh,
Sam.
that's what it was.
I go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yep.
Sam's gonna have Skulk. on
Sam
next
Skulk. Yep,
lethal.
Sam Skulks himself. There you go.
Yeah, I misplayed it. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good game.
Looks like we're gonna go to game 2 now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
your
yeah, that
analysis.
kind of played out just like.
Can't be bothered to read all that.
I was gonna say, yeah, it played out just like you drew it up.
Yeah.
Like the ring temp mechanic really put in a lot of work here.
Oh yeah, and we didn't even see the other card that I tend to be worried about from the control side, Sauron's Ransom. That card is just really strong in these grindy blue mirrors. Like you mentioned, it's almost like a factor fiction. It's just cheaper and has a lot more upside to it going into the late game, being able to tempt a creature or have the ring tempt you, put your ring bear on a creature. We'll see if Sauron's Ransom comes up in these next couple of games, if we get a game 3 or in game 2. But
It's a bit
looking at
expensive.
sideboards here, it is, yeah. Looking at sideboards here, I'm thinking it's going to be kind of a similar plan to Jason's plan against the Re-scaminator deck. I would expect to see Fails, Pyroblasts. We might see Hole Breacher. Carpet of Flowers is good. You know that he's on Wasteland and is playing blue duels, so that's kind of what I would expect from the control deck. And from Nick's side, I would think Court of Cunning is pretty insane. If he can resolve that on curve without Jason having a threat in play, that's going to be Leyline binding or bust territory. So that I would think is coming in. The Fluster seems strong. Triumphs of his own could come in. Just
Absolutely.
as another way to just as another way to increase threat density against the white removals. So we're drawing up hands here.
I'll try it.
Okay.
Sure.
We got a Ponder to start the game for Jason.
Yep, we're gonna be playing our lands. We're gonna be cantripping a bit. Hopefully, Jason can bring out a Beanstalk through a possible Spell Pierce. But nope, we're continuing past the turn. We're in a Brainstorm.
On my end step?
No, my turn.
Oh, yeah.
Brainstorm's good.
And this is really what you want to see in these blue mirrors from both sides is early sculpting. The old joke, right? When the dust settles, the blue player who played more cantrips wins the fight. And that metric doesn't always hold up, but it's pretty accurate. So having early sculpting from both of them is hopefully going to lead us into a good game 2 here. It's always tough when you're the control player and your hand has all reactive spells and no way to really get your own plan going. So we're going to see a Thoughtseize here from Nick. This is really good for him if
This hand is kind of hard to Thoughtseize, though. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
You're
The
probably going to get
information
the
is
sword
nice, but-
here.
Yeah, it's a resilient hand. I think I would take swords too.
Just make it so that most of the stuff that Jason does costs a lot of mana.
Take Swords to Plowshares. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can't take Uro, obviously. The Terminus is hanging out without a way to be miracled, and so swords is the take there. That makes a lot of sense.
But this is the kind of hand that you see, like, you're sculpting, but Jason clearly kept a hand with a lot of threats in this control mirror. It's like, we're going to jam Uro eventually. We're going to jam Triumph eventually. You know, we have swords for some of Nick's early stuff, and so eventually we're going to go over the top of him and see how that goes. I think it makes sense, but like you said,
Hoping,
both of them are sculpted. Both of them are preparing for the big fights.
yeah. We'll see what kind of lands Jason goes for here. I am inclined to get a basic plains and maybe Savannah. He's going for forest
Island.
Okay.
We do have to be mindful,
I do.
right? Nick's list does have 4 wastelands in it, so
Yeah, I do like having just no questions asked access to white mana in this matchup. It looks like Jason didn't go for white mana at all, though. Maybe thinking that basic plains makes it harder to cast Uro, which is also an obvious consideration. He has another land, although
it doesn't
this one
fetch
does
basic
not find
planes.
basic plains. Yeah, we'll see if it matters. You know, I don't know. There's so many angles. Maybe Nick doesn't even have the wasteland, but it's those micro decisions that can come
Lavinia
up.
comes
So
in.
we'll see if that matters. Interesting. So Nick brought in Lavinia, I guess, thinking shutting off Force of Wills and making it so that
Solitudes, that kind of thing.
yeah, making it so that those pitch cards
Bindings.
don't hurt.
Yeah, Leyline Binding is also a
Leyline
card.
Binding.
I mean, not all the time, but like you'd make it so that you have to have 6 lands to play Leyline Binding is going to slow somebody down. 5 lands to cast Triumph off the top. Terminus.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Yeah,
not Triumph.
I like
Lavinia is
it.
only
It's-
non-creature, right? Am I crazy? No. Yeah,
Lavinia
non-creature
is-
spells with converted mana cost. So you don't get the Triumph off of this, but you get everything else I said.
Yeah, you do get some pretty relevant cards, but not the Triumph. I think it's a really interesting and smart move. Smart move to bring this card in. I like the thought process there. We're seeing a brainstorm that Nick is thinking about right now. Put some cards back and has a fetch land to follow up. So getting in for some beatdowns now with Lavinia, but
Here comes
an
the
ambush
endurance.
Endurance, yeah. This is
Endurance is one of the more
This is gonna
aggressively
be
statted of the
interesting.
Evoke Elementals. Like, in any deck where I have Endurance, getting a 3-mana flash 3/4 is actually just quite good. Like, the graveyard is not really a consideration in this matchup currently. Like, there's no permanence that he's trying to get back with Samwise, and we're just blocking Lavinia. It seems good here.
See, I'm not sure it's resolved yet. It feels like Nick is thinking about potentially countering it or removing it before blocks.
You know that Jason doesn't have much
But
left
yeah,
in the hand.
Endurance.
Yeah, we are countering
Right.
it.
I saw today that on the preview stream they're printing the Evoke Elementals with retro border treatment, which is pretty sweet.
Oh, that's nice. I gotta go check that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be getting some retro border endurances, no doubt. So we're fetching here, maybe finding something like Scrubland.
Yep, there's a Scrubland.
We'll see what the follow-up here is from Nick. Maybe Bowmaster?
Snapcaster.
A snap.
Get the Brainstorm?
So yeah, that
Frosty.
endurance would have been a lot more relevant than we realized, because he did have Snap in hand to keep the graveyard alive, being able to force it and now strip a card. Pretty strong. What is the take here, Ben? What do you think? The castable
Probably-
Triumph or the Terminus?
I would have maybe taken the, yeah, I guess the Terminus is almost castable as well. So I'm not surprised he takes the Terminus here, because he has his own clock. But not taking the triumph, I think, signals that he probably has some other removal. I wouldn't be surprised if he was holding something like a Swords Fruit, given this take. I probably would have been inclined to take the triumph here, considering the board state.
Terminus.
Not knowing what's the next hand, it's
That's fast.
kind of just conjecture. We'll see Jason fetch twice here, down to 17. Probably searching out something like Volcanic Island and maybe Savannah. Yeah.
I will cast Catherine. No cards in here?
Yeah. We really need to get all our colors in. We can't afford to go get the Surveil land.
Results. Okay.
We are
See Jason
dropping
go
the
for this
task.
track here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. You know, Nick's known about this triumph for a long time, and yep, he's prepared for it. Has the swords.
Yeah, we kind of expected that.
Can't even force back because of Lavinia in play. Just having that confidence to just know that this game plan is going to work. It's the benefit of cards like Thoughtseize in control decks like this. Because you're not always running black. You don't always get to do this. Murktide coming down as well. The clock is only getting faster and faster, and the options that Jason has are dwindling with only a force in hand.
Lavinia. I've had to reread Lavinia many times in my life.
17.
It's like, oh right, that card that I wanted to cast. Can't cast that.
Trigger. Yeah. Target target.
We are getting
Here's
the
Sanctuary,
Sanctuary,
though.
yeah. That's kind of one of the reasons why, like, Terminus
And it
is a bit of a scary take. Is like I was gonna mention when he was Thoughtseizing it. It's like you put that in the graveyard, that can be mysticaled. And now that we have 6 lands, it can still be cast for 1 mana. This is a thing that can happen. So this bails Jason out here.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you're looking for.
Randomize.
But you could, I guess, you could just tap
Yeah.
6 mana for this regardless. Now that you have the lands, so.
Right.
I'm gonna cast Uro.
Yeah, that Terminus looks really good there. And we're going to bring back Uro too, so the tables have kind of turned here in Jason's favor very quickly.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't have been able to bring back the Uro on the same turn if you didn't have that discarded.
Cast Uro. Sure. Trigger, go to flooded.
So maybe
So
there's
we see the
merit
escape
to
cost being paid.
yeah, maybe there's merit to discarding this to Triumph, holding on to the swords for later, letting a Terminus happen, and then just rolling with it based on what you have. Swordsing an Uro.
Sauron's Ransom.
Yeah.
But here comes Sauron's
Here's
Ransom.
Ransom.
We were talking about it, so it's going to tempt, and we're going to see some face-up and face-down piles here. This is one of the first times I've ever seen this card actually cast in paper, so...
Card's good.
Really sweet. Yeah.
Definitely puts a weird
Strong.
decision into your opponent's hands, right? It's like, you're looking at this pile, it's like, man, I don't know what they want. I don't know what they would take, and I don't know what they wouldn't, and, like... The asymmetry of having to pick a face-up and face-down pile is a really interesting thing to be putting into Paper Magic. I love this card.
And, it's in a deck like Nyx too, where you have a lot of really low mana value threats like Bowmasters and Sam, 2 mana for a Murktide, what have you. It gives you a quote-unquote top end to just kind of pressure your way through a control mirror like this, where like eventually I'm going to draw my ransoms. You don't have an instant speed way to gain card advantage really, and if there's no Beanstalk in play for Jason, it's gonna eventually bury him in ring
Card advantage
tempting
and ring
and
advantage. Yeah.
card advantage. Yeah, so Carpet of Flowers is a little bit late to the party here.
Plenty of mana to
Nick
work
does
with.
have 3 islands in play, but Wasteland has not been a factor in this game, so really mana is not what we want so much as just a way to protect this Uro, I would think.
I didn't see what went into the graveyard off that Sauron's Ransom, but it was a Ponder and a Murktide that was face up and being taken. I think one of the graveyard cards was Surgical, and I think the other card was a white card. I don't know what the other card was, though.
But then I'm just like, when you have double Mother into Violence,
Okay.
it's just not
Yeah, I missed that too.
like, outside of those drops, I don't know that it's very good. But
Cycle it away.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uro's coming in, though.
It is what it is. God sees you.
We're thought seizing again. I mean, this Uro's been drawing Jason cards. The
little-
card advantage is coming back.
Risky to Thoughtseize here. I mean, Nick is, I think, dead on board after this Thoughtseize. So if he doesn't have, he's looking at counter magic. So
It's kind of like,
I don't know.
yeah, you can't take him off force here. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game 3 here in a second, potentially. Because we've got Lethal Attacker on board. Maybe Nick can come up with a blocker, but it'd have to be exactly Bowmasters because you need 2 bodies to get around this Leyline binding. And we do go to game 3, so...
Yeah.
Before they reprinted Escape Shift, and before they started printing all these nice cards, so I had like a million type foil shifts. I had all the fetches.
And maybe Nick there was just wanting a little more information. To say like, okay, yeah, I'm dead to Uro, but I'm gonna Thoughtseize you just to see if there's any other weird sideboard shenanigans going on.
So the only thing I didn't do was obviously get super nice way to put Hills on my house. And
Pretty sure that kicks me out.
What's that?
Pretty sure this kicks me
Yeah,
out.
I was not out of line, so otherwise, but I had to.
I mean, I go.
Yeah, and then like every now and then I do sideboard non-foil, so it's super easy. Easy to get in and out, but that deck was so good. I'll take the play. Okay. It's just like not a good deck anymore. Yeah, as long as they all do.
Nick's game plan really go exactly the way he wanted it to in game 1. And in game 2, it got a little scrappy, but timely. Terminus bought back with that Mystic Sanctuary was huge, being able to immediately recast the Uro from the graveyard. So that was kind of bread and butter for the Terminus-based Uro deck, this Beanstalk strategy. We'll see what happens here in game 3.
Yep.
We've had some great matches today, for real. It's been really fun watching this back. I was sad I couldn't make it.
Yeah, same here. It's very, very exciting. I'm glad the Storm community still got represented, though. So, people picking up the slack in my absence, and the Control community is getting represented too in your absence. And it's a lot of variety and a lot of great play, a lot of great games. I'm super happy watching all these matches. We come out with a turn one
Thoughtseize. Yeah. This is where Nick wants to be, just having like perfect information right off the bat. You can strip him of this carpet and then say like, okay, I know exactly what your hand is. I can play around it. Sure, you have land drops, but it's gonna give Nick a lot of security just knowing going forward. Here's what I'm facing, and that's the strength of
We're taking the carpet, yeah.
In the matchup. Yeah, I think you probably just always take the carpet because aside from Prismatic Ending, Nick doesn't really have a way to remove it, and it is eventually going to give Jason a huge mana advantage to just like crank out triumphs for even without Miracle, or crank out a Terminus
Or fourth
without a Miracle. Fourth becomes a huge problem. So, and if Nick has Wastelands in hand, it makes even more sense to take out the carpet. That's the central part of his strategy, wanting to be like, here's my cheap threat, I'm choking you out of mana, and carpet invalidates that, so it makes sense to pick that card.
Yeah, and you want to be spending your Prismatic Endings on Beanstalks anyway. It's like, you're not going to go out of your way to kill a carpet that you don't have to.
Hang out, play some dance games.
Right.
Yeah, I need to go get my headphones so I can plug into some of the amps around here. Nice. You guys need to come up with this bolo. Yeah, I know. I want to come. I keep missing them. I saw you had families. I know. But hopefully the next one.
And I've got a very
Brainstorm. Again, we're in the trenches here. We're holding up. We're preparing for the big fights. We're passing the turn. We're playing fetches. That's a wasteland.
There's a wasteland. Yep. Choosing not to use it, maybe indicating Sauron's ransom is in hand. But we've got a miracle trigger here from Jason. Going to be fetching in response to that, I'm sure. Thinking about what land we're grabbing. Maybe we'll see basic planes this time without Uro being in hand. I don't know. And this is where you want to be if you're Jason too. I mean, an early triumph, sure, it could eat his swords, but you're getting cards out of your opponent's hand. You're saying
Pressure on. Yeah.
this is a threat that outclasses all your threats and will eventually kill you, and do it pretty quickly. So this is a good second turn here for Jason. Always want to hit that like miracle early and often. So.
Right, and this is the difference. It's like in the previous matches, or in the first game, right? Nick had the Caracas, and like the Caracas is just the biggest deal of this matchup. While this is in play, it's like the control player has to be afraid. It's like, man, he could Bowmasters and Sam and then bounce something, or like, you know, start ratcheting up the ring, and like this Triumph isn't even going to get in for damage anymore, and what am I going to do? With no Caracas, now it's just like Nick can only remove the Triumph. It actually behaves like the threat it's supposed to be.
Maze surveilling a Misty. We do have swords for the Triumph, which Jason is fine with. He's going to gain some life here. He has more threats in the deck. We see a Bowmaster as well, so little 1-2 punch there, getting his own threat down. So I'm wondering if Nick, yeah, he's probably thinking about firing off this Wasteland now on Hedge Maze, I would think. Smart getting planes there by Jason. Like I had mentioned, I think white removal is just really key in this matchup for...
Don't want to get taken off it, yeah.
Yeah, insulating yourself against a Wasteland, very important. Here's Sam, so we're going to buy back a Wasteland.
Wasteland, yeah. I was talking about this in the very first game we had the Sam, but Sam buying back Wasteland is kind of nuts when you're talking about locking a control player off of like 2 to 3 lands in a turn. It's, you know, we took them off the carpet and we're taking them off the lands here. That looks really, really bad.
And that's why that Thought Seize was so crucial. If carpet's in play, the Wasteland does a lot less. Luckily, there's no Caracas, though. So Sam is dealt with. There are 3 more in the deck,
Sams,
of course,
yeah.
But, yeah. At least for now. But it already kind of did its work, right? I mean, it effectively drew a card, ate a removal spell. It's a really good exchange in Nick's favor, so...
Yeah. We made haste while the sun was shining with this Wasteland. Like, we played it twice this turn. We weren't representing Caracas or another Sam there, so it's like, it absolutely did its job. Yeah, we're brainstorming again.
Brainstorm. What are you thinking right now in this matchup, Jason? Are you thinking, like, I'm in trouble, I really need to, you know, advance my own board state? What's your thought process at this point in the game?
Yeah, definitely reeling from the Wastelands, but thankfully still drawing lands at this point, so I still like, you know, feel like I'm still in it.
For sure.
Yeah. We'd really love to see Beanstalk or cards like Solitude to get this Bowmaster off the battlefield. We're going to see a fetch here.
Even an
Getting
Uro would be
drop.
welcome here, right? Like, you know, just, even though it's drawing cards, it's just going to be a threat.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, Endurance.
Endurance, pretty good.
Ambush 3-4. really good
Yeah,
against
and we've
control.
seen how Nick is. Yeah, we've seen how Nick has utilized his graveyard too. I mean, it's not the text. The bottom half of Uro's text or of Endurance's text box is not irrelevant here. Having
No.
Snapcaster in the deck, so it eats swords and looks like the orcs are going to get in, but
Yeah. But what?
we're basically seeing like close to parity here. It looks like both players have 3 cards or 4 cards in hand, but the orc is just shutting down some of the cantripping that Jason would like to do. So, in a bit of a waiting room, perhaps waiting for another white removal spell to unlock some action.
Yeah, I'd say that Jason was a bit behind before the endurance, but the endurance trading for the swords, I think, was a trade, and Nick's graveyard was definitely a trade up for him, and we are back up to parity or close to it. Ring ticking up again, Sam coming in, getting back a fetch or something. Yeah, and
This is
yeah,
the
then
nightmare here, right? We're really hoping if you're Jason to not see that card, and Nick's digging for it undoubtedly,
the
shuffling very
Caracas.
quickly. Hasn't made his land drop yet. He knows that Caracas is probably lights out here, so or not necessarily lights out, but just incredibly big thorn in Jason's side. So
Combat? Yeah. Loot trigger? Yeah.
I think he would have played the Caracas if he had found it. So
Yeah,
he's gonna
we just
loot and. Not sure exactly what he found off that loot. It looks like he discarded Flooded Strand, which we knew about. He
Yep.
returned that with Sam. So
Yep, even if you don't need lands, just getting more cards to loot away is just brilliant for the One Ring. Up, Lavinia is coming down as a threat here. Not the greatest threat considering we're kind of close to 5 lands to Cardcaster Trance, but turning off your opponent's pitchcast forces is always going to be something you're happy to do.
Combat. Combat. Loot trigger?
and it's already a quick clock, right? Like he's swinging in for what is this, 6
7,
damage?
6, yeah. Yeah, Swords on Lavinia, that does work.
Yeah, Caracas would have made that impossible.
Yep.
Take 4.
I wonder, like, is there any consideration of having more than one Caracas in the deck? It just seems so good. Like,
I've talked to Nick about that. He has told me that there are lists that run 2. It comes at a cost, though, right? I mean, it's a wastelandable mana source that
legendary
only makes one
land.
color of mana.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's legendary. I don't play this. I don't play Nick's deck. I think he's considered it and maybe even has run 2 in the past. It looks like today he's only on 1. So
Yeah. Archive, bins another land. I mean, we're getting a lot of card selection on this side of the board here. Loots and surveils and yada yada. Like, that's going to help the more turns go by. It's like, in any deck, when you're going up against a deck with this much card selection, it's just every turn feels like an eternity. It's like, oh god, they're seeing 4 or 5 cards this turn. I can't compete with this. I gotta find something.
right, and the ring mechanic just giving you so much incremental value
Yeah,
is
yeah.
huge, and we're seeing a force pitch
Force pitch
Lorien.
Lorien, force pitch Murktide, then Bowmaster's resolves, gets in. Need Terminus again. That's gonna be the thing.
Yeah,
Throwing away another Bowmasters even
Term-
from the ring loot. Knowing that the cards in your opponent's hand are better than Bowmasters when they have 2 mana open is not a good feeling.
no. And this is a spot where there's a terminus in the graveyard, right?
I can't
think.
I
tell.
don't think so.
I can't remember a time that it was
Okay.
put there. So
Okay. Yeah, so Mystic Sanctuary wasn't I
Got a
was
baggy
thinking
on.
like, well, maybe if there had been one and he hadn't fetched the planes, he could have sanctuaried it. But I don't. Yeah, that doesn't seem like it's in play at all. So um, I don't know what Jason's draw here was. It's gonna need to be something like Solitude maybe
Solitude,
to
yeah,
gain
that's
life
what
and
it'd have to
remove
be.
something.
Well, whatever it is, we're gonna
We're
find
gonna
out.
find out.
We're on the goodies. We're
Boom,
dying on our own
boom.
terms.
There you go.
We're looking for Veil of Summer, I think. That's that you like brainstorm, put the Bowmaster triggers on the stack, Veil, get rid of both the Thoughtseize and the Bowmaster triggers.
Had
That's
Terminus
the
in
out.
hand and almost had a way to like maneuver against Terminus.
Either
He's
way,
doing
it looks
yeah,
like
he's
Nick
we're
is
done
gonna
here.
get it. Yeah.
I had
Yeah, I had
Well,
Terminus in
those were
hand,
some
ended up
great
drawing another
games.
Brainstorm, but I couldn't quite sequence it the way I needed to.
Yeah. Especially with the triggers still going on the stack for all this stuff.
Yeah,
You need to like sequence it so that you like drew, but like you can't because it has to be your first draw on the opponent's
exactly.
turn. So yeah, it's all really messy.
Yeah, it was kind of close, but like you said, the triggers from Bowmaster were my demise either way.
because either way the triggers were gonna kill me. That's the problem.
Well, great way to cap off the tournament here. I'm pretty happy. How about you, Taylor?
For some grind fest.
That was really awesome. Really seemed like everyone had some really good back and forth games. We saw a lot of deck diversity. We saw some more stock lists like the Re-scaminator list, this Beanstalk list. We saw some flavor with Black Saga Storm and sort of a more rogue Storm deck that Walker was running. Nick's Esper deck is always really fun to see on the channel, and yeah, just like great day of
Everyone,
Legacy,
yeah.
great variety.
Everyone's got their own personalities, and that's really expressed in these tournaments. And like, we all like different kinds of decks. And Legacy, I think more than any other format, it really does have lots and lots of different things you can try. Like, we had 10 decks represented here, and that's not even like a fifth of the viable metagame as far as I'm concerned. Well, maybe that's a little bit generous, but there's, if you look at a sideboard guide, I see quite a lot of lists on there. If I go to a Legacy tournament, I'm prepared to go up against a lot of shells of deck lists and a lot of variations on those shells besides. So really showcase the health and like diversity of the format here and like what everybody likes to do.
I
Yeah,
agree. Great
awesome
day.
to see this turn out. Yeah.
Yep, we had a great tournament, and appreciate everybody that came out. And
What was
Ben,
the top four
Taylor.
in the end again?
Oh yeah, sorry, good point. So Nick finished the day in first place with his Esper Legends deck. I believe. Hang on, let me
Cody
pull
was
up.
in second place.
Yeah, I feel like Cody was second. Let me just pull up the list and double check. Yeah, so Nick in first with Esper Legends, Cody in second with Re-scaminator, Jason in third with four color Beanstalk, and Darwin in fourth place with Black Saga Storm.
Wow, so we saw all of them today. Great showing from everyone on stream and from everyone in the tournament. Sign us off, Jason.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks everybody for hanging out. And again, for our YouTube viewers, remember to check the link tree in the video description. And Ben, Taylor, thank you so much for your wonderful commentary. And we will catch you guys later.
Thanks as always, Jason. Thanks for everyone tuning in, and we'll look forward to the next 1K this fall sometime.
All right, guys, have a good night.